Oh, okay. I'll stay here. But
Alrighty.
I want to
We're
grab a
live.
lamp.
Here we are. We're live and we're excited. I'm Lifeguard Scott Catamas, and welcome to a special 3-hour edition of Straight Talk with Scott and Trish. And I'm Scott, and of course, there's the lovely Trish. And we have an amazing show. We're going to be focusing on more follow-up to everything that took place with Mark Sims in this incredible Harmonic Convergence 2020 show that he put together. The stories coming in, the transformations coming in, the UFO footage coming in, and he's got his fantastic staff person, Zenka, who's been compiling all the people coming in, and we're going to let them talk a little bit. And our special guest for the first hour is Danny Sheehan. And if you don't know Danny Sheehan, he is literally a legend. I'm so honored to have you with us, Danny. We're going to primarily talk a lot with him because he has this extraordinary history that really gives a lot of credibility to this whole movement. So we're going to be hearing a lot from Danny in a moment. But I want to start by just asking you, Mark, it's been a few days now since, it's been 8 days, I think, since the Tuesday event. What's your experience been like?
Wow, so many things have happened since the 14th, the last day of the Harmonic Convergence. I'm still trying to catch up with email and other correspondence, people sending me information on my website. There's been a number of sources of people sending me information. And so people like Zenka, who's on the program tonight, and others who were involved in the Harmonic Convergence have been helping me sift through the information. For instance, I think we now have over at least 50 videos, if not more. We may be approaching something like 70 videos of people who videotaped a craft on the evening of the 14th of July. And so we've got a collection, a little library that we've started, and some of these are so wonderful because they involve family members, and you hear the comments that children are making while they're observing a craft for the first time. So that gives it some authenticity and some personal element to the sighting that you rarely see in one of these UFO videos on YouTube, where it's spontaneous and because we anticipated seeing a ship, you had people who were really prepared with a camera in case they were lucky enough to see a craft, and the response wasn't one of wonder in terms of what is this, and they're kind of filled with uncertainty and doubt and maybe a little scared. And this, in every single case, you have people really excited. They're like, yay! So that's the response that we had hoped that people would have from having a first sighting experience. And so those are just the videos, but I've had hundreds of emails from people just saying, what a wonderful job. This helped change my life. I saw my first craft. Even if they didn't videotape it, I've been getting amazing response and feedback from people. That's all very positive. And Zenka later will be sharing some of the survey results. We had an opening survey that people took when they registered before the Harmonic Convergence, and she collected quite a bit of data from people. And then we had a closing survey, and she shares that data with us. And it's just so not only enlightening, but it is inspiring to me because it really points to a future in which we have a very exciting, bright future. And it's just so not only enlightening.
I mean, triple Mark Sims there.
That's Tejbar. That's
There it is. It's
echoing other sound.
Oh, well, actually what I was doing was starting a watch party, which is actually a great reminder for everybody. First of all, welcome. We've got about 50 people in the webinar room with us live. And of course, a lot of people now watching on all of our different restreaming channels. Please share this out on your pages. This is how we meet new friends. And you get a chance to, a lot of people, of course, know Mark Sims, but some of you may not know Danny. And Danny's extraordinary. And I really want to feature him a lot in this first hour before we lose him to another Zoom show. So share this out. And this is how we get the word out about really what's going on in our world right now. And actually with that, I'm going to put the spotlight on Danny for a minute. And I'm going to mildly embarrass him, hopefully, as I read his extraordinary accomplishments. Danny has been, over the last 45 years, involved in some of the most significant legal cases of public interest as it relates to really challenging the government and the powers that be. He was actively involved with the Pentagon Papers, the Karen Silkwood case, the Greensboro massacre, the Lepenka bombing. He established the Christic Institute, and he's been involved in a wide variety of things, talking about everything from the assassination of JFK to working very strongly on the Lakota People's Law Project. And so I want to start by saying congratulations, Danny, on what's happened at Standing Rock. And thank you for your 45 years of service. And wow, we actually have something we can celebrate. Tell us a little bit about where things stand there.
Well, where things stand on the Dakota Access Pipeline is that Judge James Boasberg, who is the federal district court judge, the trial court judge that the case has been in front of for now almost 4 years. The original lawsuit was filed in 2016 to try to get the federal court in Washington, D.C. to enter a preliminary or temporary restraining order to stop the planned construction of the pipeline, because it was clear that the Energy Transfer Partners Corporation that was going to build the pipeline had failed to comply with the requirements of the National Environmental Protection Act, and that it was clear to us that it was true. There were all kinds of qualities about the project that were transparently violative of the Environmental Protection Act. But the judge would not give the preliminary injunction. So they began construction of this. And then when they got ready to try to start pumping oil through it, the people asked, Earth Justice was the big major public interest law group that was representing the Standing Rock Sioux tribe in the council there. And then later on, the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribal Council and the Rosebud Sioux Council all joined together to try to stop this pipeline. And when they got ready to start putting oil through it, they requested a preliminary injunction, and the judge wouldn't give it to them again. Kept saying, "Oh well, you know, it looks like the oil company is going to end up winning this thing. They're going to be able to comply with the Environmental Protection Act. They may not have done a good job in their preliminary filings, but they cure it." And the whole thing went on. Then they started pumping oil through it, and they were going on and on. Finally, the DC Circuit Court of Appeals, the appellate judge that's above Judge Boasberg, entered a ruling in another case against the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that were actually involved in authorizing the building of this pipeline over federal land. And Judge Boasberg realized that he couldn't get away with this anymore. And so he entered a ruling in March, actually, just before the COVID virus stuff all started. He entered a ruling saying that they had to that they were in violation of the Environmental Protection Act, and they weren't going to likely be able to cure it. And so therefore he wanted to know what to do about this. The obvious answer was, of course, is to shut off the pipeline, make them drain all the oil out of it and take it out of there, dig it up and take it out of there. Well, he continued his same policy of kind of malingering and allowing this thing to go forward. And so then he finally took briefs on this. We at our office, the Lakota People's Law Office of the Romero Institute, we filed amicus briefs telling him that he'd better well shut this pipeline off and drain it out, or else we were going to attack at the Court of Appeals level the precedent that allowed him to continue delaying on this thing. And so he ended up entering a ruling on June 6th, agreeing to shut off the pipeline and ordering them to drain the pipeline by August 5th. Now, what they did is they appealed to a 3-judge panel of the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals. And the 3-judge panel has entered a temporary stay on the injunction, but they demanded an immediate filing of all the briefs, making it clear that they were going to do this expeditiously. And Monday of this week, here we sit here on Friday, Monday, all of the briefs were due. So the 3-judge panel has the case in front of them right now. We're anticipating a ruling early next week. And we believe that the 3-judge panel is going to vote 2-1 to support Judge Boasberg's closing off of the pipeline. And it's doubtful that the oil company is going to try to appeal it to the full on-bank, full court, the full 11 judges of the court, because there are 7 Democrats and 4 Republicans on that particular panel. So we're going to win that one too. And so that I believe that next week, right between now and your next show, there's going to be a ruling from the 3-judge panel supporting Judge Boasberg's order to shut off the pipeline and to drain it out. And they're trying to get that all done by August 5th. So that August 5th date that Boasberg has set to have the pipeline shut off and drained is still in place there, even though they haven't been ordered to shut it off yet. But that deadline, I think, is looming right now. And I think that we're going to win this thing. And I think they're going to shut off the pipeline and require the pipeline to stay shut off all during the preparation of a full environmental impact statement and study that they have to do. That's what they've been refusing to do all of this time. They just don't want to do the full environmental study because they know when they do, they're going to fail. And we pointed out, I don't want to get too far into the weeds on this, but for example, by their own admission, and this is an issue we raised in the major criminal defense that we raised to the people who were protesting the pipeline up in North Dakota, that by their own admission, they're totally unable to detect a leak in the pipeline of 1% or below. And they're pumping 910,000 gallons an hour of oil through that pipeline.
Wow.
So they could be leaking 9,000 gallons an hour into the environment, and they won't even know it, by their own admission. And so we said, hello, how hard is this to figure out that's a damage to the environment? And they're not going to be able to cure that. They're going to be able to wish that away because they're already on record acknowledging it. And so I think we're going to win that. And also now the Keystone XL pipeline, which is out on the west side of the Great Sioux Nation, which is the Keystone tar sands pipeline, that there is an injunction now in place against that as well. The federal district court up in Montana has issued a federal injunction against that pipeline, saying that it violates not only the National Environmental Protection Act, but also the Endangered Species Act. And so there's an injunction in place against that pipeline as well. So both of these pipelines there's a court order in place enjoining them right now. And the bad guys in both instances, the Energy Transfer Partners on the eastern boundary of the Great Sioux Nation, the Dakota Access Pipeline, and the Trans-Canada Oil Pipeline Corporation on the westernmost boundary, they're both under injunction to stop the construction of those pipelines. And the fact of the matter is we're going to be able to hold them off from construction probably until the election in November, which is coming up in basically 100 days. So we just have to hold them off for another 100 days. And then Joe Biden is going to be elected president. And he's already vowed to shut off both the pipelines. So there's a major sea change is getting ready to happen in 100 days here. There's all kinds of speculation going on about Donald Trump refusing to leave office and sending in William Barr to do investigations in the key swing states and ask to have the Electoral College hold off on ratifying the votes until Barr has finished his investigation. That's all just a bunch of crap. You know, the fact of the matter is Larry Tribe, Lawrence Tribe, the constitutional law professor at Harvard University, has an entire crew of top level law students right now studying all the ways to stop Trump from doing that. So, you know, we may have some worse constitutional crisis coming up if Trump really goes to the mattresses on this thing. But and he's got William Barr backing him on that, and he's got a Supreme Court with 5 rather permanent votes against the 4 of the 4 moderates. He's got 5 really conservative and reactionary judges, but Justice Roberts, the Chief Judge of the United States Supreme Court, is aware of the fact that everybody's watching them, and everybody realizes that Trump has appointed 236 new federal judges, to the federal judicial system, and they're all members of the Federalist Society, this hardcore right-wing reactionary group that basically think that the Constitution is a ship that sits in the harbor in Boston, which is the USS Constitution. It's,
Wow.
but the bottom line is that we're almost through this thing now. We got another 100 days to go, and it's clear that Trump is going to do stuff between his unelection on November 3rd, before the inauguration takes place on January 20th of 2021. See, he's got that entire period where he's going to be pardoning everybody, all of his criminal associates. He's going to he's going to try to pardon himself, from any federal criminal prosecution. He's going to try to fire all the U.S. attorneys who are presently engaged in criminal investigations against him. So we've still got some rough water to go through here in the next 190 days or so. But the bottom line is we can see the light at the end of the oil tunnels. And so that, things are lining up in pretty good shape, But of course, we've got the latest event going on now with the events going on in Portland, where Trump is now deploying federal troops against the citizens who are engaged in public protests. Just like we encountered at the Dakota Access Pipeline when they put the Tiger Swan Private Military Corporation into the field against all of us. I was there for 18 months up in North Dakota.
Wow.
We lived through all the snowstorms, and Mark was up there, and a lot of people, tens of thousands of people, over the course of that whole year or so, were deployed against that pipeline. But the bottom line is we've held it off long enough now so that it's in danger of being shut down. And it's been operating for a short time, but hopefully we'll have avoided most of the danger from those pipelines. And so the question is whether or not Donald Trump is planning to deploy more federal troops, basically, against the citizens right now. He doesn't seem to be constrained at all by the Constitution or any kind of norms. So that there may be some more of that going on, but the American Civil Liberties Union is mobilizing pretty aggressively. The National Lawyers Guild people are in the streets up there in Portland, accompanying those demonstrators and taking photographs and videos of the troops that are up there. So there's what I hope we can avoid is a period like happened in the 1930s in Germany.
Right.
Where you get the brown shirts. I mean, even the uniforms of these troops are all these light brown shirts. I mean, it's just this guy is right out of Central Casting somewhere. But
so hang on one second before we go into Portland, because there's so much you've shared.
Yeah.
And I just want, and I do this periodically, I want everybody, as we're focusing on you, just to thank you. Thank you for 45 years of service. And absolute prayer that all the hard work you and Mark and all those people in Standing Rock freezing their butts off when it looked really, really bad. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And so maximum grace to all those people that have played a role in bringing us where we are right now.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
And while we're praying, maximum grace for Ruth Ginsburg. May
right.
she please live until January.
That's right. And let her have a great retirement. You know,
Absolutely,
at that
please.
point. Yeah. So you know, it's what this is that, you know, you want to try to avoid sports analogies, but the thing is, anybody who watches any of the major NBA basketball games, you know, they can see their home team, at the beginning of the fourth quarter, 10, 15 points down. And yet, if you stay with them the whole season, you watch that in the vast majority of those games, the Golden State Warriors come back,
Right.
and they win.
Yeah.
So that just because it appears to be bleak at the particular moment, when you're sitting in 40-degree below freezing weather, with 50-mile-an-hour winds blowing sideways at you in the snowstorms, the people keep wondering, oh, is this ever going to work? But the fact of the matter is that when you've been practicing law and doing the kind of cases I've done for 50 years, you have a perspective on this, and you can really see that you don't want to panic, and you don't want people to start becoming reckless. I mean, so we've got to try to assist in constraining voluntarily a number of our people who are getting ready to throw in the towel, and jump out of a first-story window here, over the despair of the present conditions, or they're actually willing to resort to violence, of getting ready to pull up the bricks on the roads and throw them through the windows of the banks and stuff like that. People have got to calm down a little bit.
Absolutely. I want to read a couple of the comments that are coming in, because we always like to acknowledge our viewers. And welcome. We've got about 70 people in the Zoom room and a lot of people on Facebook. So I'm going to read just a couple. Deborah Haviland says, thank you, Danny. And she talks about her father being a political scientist officer at Harvard. A lot of people saying thank you. Heather Caldwell says, the pendulum swings the other way. Dear friend Katrina Valancourt, who you know well, says thank you. Here's to the light at the end of the tunnel. And just a lot of people really appreciating your work and the work. And I want to share a story, and I'm curious if you've heard this story also, Danny.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wonderful story about when they released, how periodically every 20 years or 30 years after a president's out of office, they release certain papers. And a few years ago, they released papers that talked all about what happened when Nixon was president. And clearly the United States was losing the Vietnam War. And so a group of generals came together and met with him at the White House to present a proposal for using nuclear weapons on Hanoi.
That's right.
And all he had to do was give it the thumbs up. And it was a very rainy day in Washington, D.C. And there were a bunch of protesters, anti-war kids out with their signs getting drenched. And the papers show, and I always get choked up when I tell this story, papers show that Nixon referred to say, look at all those kids out in the rain protesting the war. What the hell is going to happen if we drop nukes on Hanoi? And he said no to that proposal. Mm-hmm. And what always breaks my heart, and it's so beautiful, is all those kids probably thought, we're not doing crap. What are we doing? No one's paying any attention to us. We're getting soaked. And many of them probably have no idea that they actually played a role in not allowing that horrible thing to happen. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes we never know what a difference we're making. And so what happened at Standing Rock, the story I just told about Vietnam, it's so important for us to follow our truth, because we never really know who we might be impacting or who we might be influencing.
Well, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And the reality is that even Buddhist monks sitting up in a monastery high in the Himalayas, meditating, putting out the kind of energy into the universe, the love and the support for life, and help and affection for people, has a direct effect. It's called the butterfly effect. Even the flapping of the butterfly wings, can end up causing a hurricane on the other side of the world. We need to understand that you stay devoted to your principles, to the values. Don't get flustered and become violent and in despair. And we'll get out the other side of this thing. I'll be here from 1945, up to 2045. So I've got another, 25 years or so of active work before I retire. That, so that, that when I turn 100, that I'll be able to relax and write books or something, about what's happened during this 100-year period. But we still got another 25 years of putting our shoulder to the wheel here. That they're going to get they're going to get Joe Biden coming in to be president of the United States. And I've sat and talked with Joe Biden. I've been to dinner with Joe Biden, with him and Hunter. Hunter Biden was in the Jesuit Volunteer Corps when I was general counsel at the national headquarters in Washington in the social ministry office. Hunter Biden met his wife, who was in the Jesuit Volunteer Corps together. I've briefed Joe Biden when he was the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, giving him detail. In fact, I was meeting with Joe Biden when I was, just before I went to his meeting, I was called by Danny Coulson, who was the chief investigator for then FBI director William Webster, saying, oh, the special prosecutor Lawrence Walsh on the Iran-Contra case is going to be flying into National Airport here today. And we want you to come and meet him, so that when we drive him from the airport to start his job as a special prosecutor, you can be the first one to talk to him about the Iran-Contra stuff, because you know more about it than anybody else. And I said, I've got a meeting with Joe Biden at the same time, so I didn't get to meet with him the first time, which I think was one of the mistakes I made in the Iran-Contra case. I should have gone to meet with Lawrence Walsh. But so I know Joe Biden, and I know what he's like. He's a decent guy. He's a nice guy. He's not the most progressive person in the whole world, but he's a liberal. He's a kind of a genuine liberal. But he's very dedicated to trying to get things, quote, back to normal. And so I think that the next 4-year period that we've got coming up is going to be a period of getting things back to normal. The normal wasn't all that good. But it's a lot better than what's been going on the last 4 years. But the getting back to normal with Joe Biden reminds me a lot of when Ronald Reagan, what he said, what's all this talk, he said, about a black problem? He says, well, I remember when there wasn't any black problem. Of course, that was when there was complete racial segregation in the schools, and Amos and Andy were the only people you ever saw on television that were black.
Oh my God!
So that, Joe has this kind of attitude about what's getting back to normal, which is a little bit like getting back to the 50s, But at least it's going to start balancing things off a little bit. What we've got to do, all of us who are spiritual progressives, is we've got to start planning right now and leaning into this thing of what is it going to be like in 2024 when the next administration comes in. Joe Biden isn't going to run again, that he'll be too old. And now his selection of the vice presidential candidate right now, he's oscillating back and forth between whether he's going to pick someone who is going to make a good president after he retires in 4 years, or whether he's just going to try to pick someone from one of the swing states, Georgia or Wisconsin or somewhere like that, who isn't really going to be necessarily the best president after him. So we have, those of us in the spiritual progressive community, have to start thinking in terms of what we want to see happen, what kind of policies we want to have. We've got to start getting very detailed and concrete about what we want. Like, for example, if you stop and take, of all 76 people that are on the line right now, if you said to them all, well, who do you want to be Secretary of Defense? And most of the people are going to say, Secretary of Defense? I don't want anybody to be the Secretary of Defense. Well, that's not the right answer. That's not the right answer. There's going to be a Secretary of Defense. And so you have to start thinking about who you want that person to be, and it's probably not going to be Dennis Kucinich,
Right.
So he may be the head of the Department of Peace, that we may be successful in getting a Department of Peace put in, and then you can have Dennis Kucinich be that, and it's not going to be Marianne Williamson, that we have to try to be realistic about what we're trying to do here, but we have to start thinking about this in a very concrete way, that we don't have to compromise our principles. We don't have to, accept somebody that we know we don't want in there, but we've got to start thinking about that right now, because that we're right on the brink. We're 100 days away from basically the functional beginning of this administration. which is going to be a 4-year period where we have the ability to craft the policies of the United States government. Still, as one of the most influential institutions in the world, the United States government. You know, and that we're here. We've been blessed with being here in this particular country, and so that I'm saying we have a job in front of us right now of getting to it. We have to develop a whole 4-year plan of what our policies are going to be, and each of these. There's 33 different, basically, cabinet level positions. And people don't even think about it most of the time. They think about the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense, but they don't think about, the other ones, the Secretary of Education, the Secretary of Transportation, Secretary of the Interior. We have to start thinking about who it is that we're thinking of getting into those positions and what policies are they going to be proposing and promulgating. So what we have to do is that instead of despairing in the face of this bizarre period we've been through over these last 4 years, what we have to do is start realizing that the running of a constitutional democracy is not a spectator sport. That we've got to get busy here and start infusing these discussions with genuine spiritual values. Yes. I mean, that's our task. That's why we're here, and that's what we need to be doing. And this issue about, to have a world culture on our planet who ho-hums about, is there an entire extraterrestrial civilization that is vastly more advanced technologically than we, and they're coming and going from our planet and trying to warn us about the dangers of global climate change on our planet, and try to assist us in thinking more intelligently about how we treat our planet. And people are going, oh, well, that's just one more story going on in the news. This is not just one more story.
Well, and that's where we want to kind of go. I want to give my partner in this show a chance to say hello and ask a question, and then let's get to the UFO part of this. Hey, take it away, Trish.
Danny, thank you so much for writing notes about everything that you've been saying. You've probably heard me ask many questions before, and the millennial in me is really activisty, and I want to make change. And for a lot of people that I talk to, we don't know how to make the most impact. Yep. So I do have some questions. I also really want to thank you for being a leader in compassionate law. I think that that's a really powerful place to be. We're a law with heart. That's beautiful. Thank you for being on the right side of history and knowing it and really following your truth and really grabbing your friends and being like, we're going. And also, I this last point that you pointed out is being the proponent for doing your research on the political figures that we bring into office is so important. It's not just I'm just gonna pick some random ABC. It's really sitting down with your friends and talking about it and really make it a party if you have to, sitting down and really dissecting them. So my two questions are. How can we continue to support the Dakota Access Pipeline in completion and full stop? How does the average person in the world, how do we show up? And again, how does the average citizen make the political changes that we want to see?
Okay. With regard to the Dakota Access Pipeline, what you need to do is, I think everybody should start planning on how they're going to come and participate personally in the celebration that the Lakota people are going to be putting together when the Dakota Access Pipeline is finally officially shut down. So I think that people want to start saying, think about how you're going to travel to North Dakota, where you're going to stay, find the people up there who have places where you can stay. Figure out whether you're going to rent an RV, like Mark did, or a big bus and put people on it. You're going to get your tents ready and stuff like that. That you have to start thinking concretely, because the scale of that celebration that's going to be taking place, and I can give you some dates here of what we're looking at, is going to be extremely important. That we're going to get probably next week, in the first week of August, either the last week of July or the first week of August, we're going to get a ruling from the 3-judge panel in the circuit upholding Judge Boasberg's order. There's going to be an appeal that's going to be taken possibly to the full bench, but the full bench is going to give it pretty short shrift. I think they're going to dismiss it. So I think that we're going to have an order from the federal district court to shut down that pipeline as of August 5th. Okay, and so that I think that what people need to start doing is start thinking in terms of, well, wait a second, this story's been going on in the background and we haven't been keeping track of it. Holy mackerel! It turns out that we won this thing. You know, now they're going to fight back and they're going to try to file some kind of a petition for the issuance of a writ of certiorari to the Supreme Court. They're going to be hoping that Chief Judge Roberts will enter a preliminary stay of the injunction so that they can hold off until the second week of October when the court comes back into session. I think Justice Roberts is going to deny that. I think that he is so worried now about losing credibility at the Supreme Court level by appearing to be toadies, you know, to Donald Trump. Now you're going to get a virulent dissent on the part of Kavanaugh. You know, he's going to, you know, delight in writing these big long dissents now. But good, keep him in a dissenting position. He can write as many dissents as he wants to because the majority is going to rule against him. So I think that what we want to do is, but we want to have this celebration before all the snow starts to fly. Okay, because you know when you get to basically Thanksgiving, after Thanksgiving, November 25th, basically it's going to start snowing in North Dakota, and it's going to go down to 40 degrees below zero again. So
yeah, I grew up in Montana, so I'm
no.
It's kind of crazy.
So I'm proposing right now, and I'll discuss with the tribal leaders. You know, I'm going to be talking with Julian Bear Runner, who's the tribal chairman for the Oglala Sioux at Pine Ridge. I'm going to be talking with Harold Frazier, who is the chairman, you know, at the Cheyenne River. I'm going to be talking with David Faith, you know, who is the chairman up at Standing Rock right now, to start getting ready for a Thanksgiving Day. A Thanksgiving Day weekend celebration in North Dakota, celebrating because by that time Joe Biden will have won the election on November 3rd, and so we know he's going to order the shutdown. We know he's going to order the shutdown of the thing. That's Sarah. I have to call her back. But the bottom line is that I think that we should all start planning to have a major celebration over Thanksgiving there in North Dakota. I'm sure that the Yangston people will be there. I think that Fort Yates will host us, the big high school. We'll get all the people who participated in the Ochete Sacoan campsite to come back. Get the military people to come back, the veterans to come back, and get the people from all 300 plus tribes around the country to come back. So we ought to start planning right now, and you talking to your people about we have to get the Lakota people to invite us all to come, but to try to have a major Thanksgiving Day celebration there and call on all of the mythology around Thanksgiving Day for the thanking of the Native people. In this case, of having saved us from the Dakota Access Pipeline, okay? And we can also celebrate the upcoming shutting down of the KXL pipeline too. So
it's a great idea, Danny. This is a great celebration.
Idea. So that's how you can deal. That's how you can deal with the Dakota Access Pipeline. Now, with regard to the rest of it, what you need to do is that there's a thing that I'm going to be doing starting at 7 o'clock now, and I'm going to be doing every Friday from 7 o'clock until 9 o'clock. There's a website. I think it's called Tatanka's Living Room. It's TATONKA, Tatanka's Living Room. I think you can find it on the internet. If you just Google it and hook into that, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through all 33 of the major executive branch offices and departments and reviewing who the candidates are that we want to consider to be filling in those positions, and what the policies are. What are the range of policy options that we've got in each one of these different areas? It's going to be like a tutorial on moving into place a new progressive government for our people. And I'm hoping that we're going to start being able to get more and more people attending that. And we can all participate in making recommendations as to who the people are that we want to have in those positions of policy. And so that what we do is we stop relying upon waiting to see who the Democratic National Committee recommends for these positions, because half of the time they're from Goldman Sachs, or some other place. And so that what I want to do is that people can join that Tatanka's living room every Friday night, and we're going to be going for the next 100 days and all the way up to the election talking about this. And then we're going to continue after that, figuring out what the administration is going to look like, because once he gets elected on November 3rd, there's going to be this long process that's going to go on all the way to January 20th of putting citizen pressure on who's going to be put into those positions. And that's going to play a large role in what the policies are going to be of those. Okay. So I think that's the most concrete thing I can recommend, is for you to go onto the website for Tatanka's living room and find out what that link is to Lincoln. And it's going to be on Zoom. It's a Zoom link. So all you have to do is link onto the thing and get on board and participate in this process, because we're going to set up a process of soliciting recommendations for nominations for all of those particular positions. And then we're going to start having a discussion about the substantive policies for each one of those 33 basic positions: transportation, education, energy, housing, urban renewal, all of those things. It sounds like a lot of homework, but the bottom line is you've got to do homework to take over the government. Yeah. We're talking about a citizen takeover of the government. Don't spend all your time trying to take over a particular police station. Take over the government.
I know you've only got 15 minutes left.
Yeah.
And I want to bring Mark back on just to tell us how he met you, what your relationship is. And then Danny, we really want to hear your perspective about ET disclosure and what's really happening. So I thank you for the amazing 40-minute tutorial on politics. I learned a lot, and I know my millennial partner Trish got excited about that. I'm going to put the spotlight on Mark for a minute. Mark, how did you meet Danny, and what do the two of you have to share about this amazing time in terms of our relationship with the Star People?
Well, it was back in 2015, and I was good friends with Costa Makris by that time. And Costa well. He's been a guest on our show here and on Saturday Night Alive as well.
He'll be back on tonight. Costa will be on tonight at 7:30.
Yeah. So Costa and I had become friends on Facebook through the CE5 groups that had begun popping up. And I became a member of all of them back then. I still try to stay current. But anyway, Costa learned about me after I posted my video. This was a YouTube video that I posted in 2015. But it was a video from 2013. It was on the anniversary of my communion with Tejbart. And it was the first time that I had publicly come out of the closet, so to speak, about my experience. And Costa saw this video and contacted Danny, originally Danny's secretary, Christy, to ask Danny to watch the video. And Danny's secretary, Christy, ended up watching it and told Danny, you got to meet this guy, Mark Sims. You got to see the video. And because Danny is so busy with his various projects, she forced him to watch the video. This is what I hear from Christy. And after watching my video, he extended an offer to come and visit him in Santa Cruz. So I flew to San Jose from Michigan. And Costa and his lovely wife, Hollis, met me for breakfast in Santa Cruz. And then we went over to the Romero Institute and met Danny. And we spent, 4 4 or 5 hours there, Danny, didn't we?
Yep. Yep.
So
Very
Danny,
happy. Very happy for 5 hours.
so
Right.
what's your connection to the UFO phenomena, Danny? And what are your experiences and what can you share with us?
Well, I like most other people with, you know, an IQ above room temperature, you know, have always figured that, well, you know, you sit out in the field when you're just a little child and you look up in the stars and you say, holy mackerel, look at each one of those stars is like a sun, and that there's clearly planets going around there. And everybody kept saying, well, we don't know if there's other planets or anywhere outside of our solar system. I kept saying, excuse me, that doesn't make much sense. And then since I figured we had all those planets going around all those different stars, there must be other people up there. There must be other beings up there. And then I started hearing about this UFO phenomenon and say, oh, wow, there's UFOs flying around here right on our planet. And so those people are coming here to see us. And so I kept on trying to figure out, watching the news and reading everything I could to figure out what's going on. So I was always fascinated by this. And I used to, every time I'd be outdoors at night, would look up at the stars and pick a particular star and just watch it sitting there throbbing at us, and figuring that there are beings sitting there, you know, in meditation, just sending out these meditative energies toward us into the universe. And so I ended up getting into doing that back, you know, just sitting there and kind of learning how to meditate and send out these love vibes out into the universe, right? And then I read about this Betty and Barney Hill that ended up having a direct face-to-face encounter with beings. And I read the incident at Exeter in Fuller's book on that. And I was fascinated by the whole thing. And I always had it kind of as a hobby or as an avocation, kind of following this stuff. And then when I was legal counsel of the United States Jesuit headquarters in Washington, D.C., in their social ministry office, I ended up getting contacted right after Jimmy Carter got elected in 1976 in November. And as you all know, he had a direct experience seeing a UFO with a bunch of other people when he was governor of Georgia. And so he contacted the Central Intelligence Agency right after being elected on November 3rd of 1976, and met with the director of the CIA and demanded being given information about the UFO thing and the ET issue. And the CIA director, who happened to be George H.W. Bush at that time, who'd been appointed by Jerry Ford after Nixon had resigned in 1974. So here it is in 1976, in December of 1970, actually late November, this happened. And George Bush refused to give him the information. He said, I want your agreement, President elect, you know, to have you make me the CIA director, you know, under your administration too. And President Jimmy Carter didn't want to do that. And so Bush wouldn't give him the information. And he said, look, if you want to get this information, you have to go to the House Science and Technology Committee and get them to contact the Library of Congress and Congressional Research Service and get them to try to get it declassified if you want to see it. And so Jimmy Carter did that. In the Science and Technology Committee contacted, you know, when the president-elect contacted them and asked them to do it, they contacted the Congressional Research Service. The Congressional Research Service assigned the Science and Technology Division of the Congressional Research Service to undertake 2 classified studies. One looking into the question of the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence, and the second one attempting to determine whether at least some of these sightings that had taken place of UFOs might actually be vehicles from an extraterrestrial civilization. And I got contacted by the Congressional Research Service in my capacity as general counsel for the Jesuit headquarters social ministry office, asking me to contact the Vatican and see if I could get access to the Vatican archives to determine what information, if any, they had about extraterrestrial intelligence and the UFO phenomenon. So I got permission from my superior at the Jesuits, Father William Davis, and our board of the 10 provincial assistant provincials in social ministry around the country. And so I agreed to do this. So I contacted the Vatican, and they said no, they wouldn't turn over any of the information. And so it didn't work very well. I wrote him a second letter saying, I'm afraid you don't understand who you're talking to here. You're talking to the Jesuit headquarters in Washington, D.C., and we want this information. And they still said no. And so I ended up not doing much more on that study at that time, but I was contacted shortly thereafter by Marcia Smith, who was the head of the Science and Technology Division of the Congressional Research Service. And she told me that, oh, look, the Congress, the House of Representatives, has cut half of all the budget for the SETI program, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, which is at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, that has all these big radio telescopes that are monitoring, looking for radio signals around the universe. And they've cut off half of their funding. Would you be willing, as legal counsel for the Jesuits, would you be willing to go with Rusty Schweiker and a bunch of the other astronauts to go around and meet with the congressional committees to try to get them, the key Congress people, to agree to put the money back in? So I agreed to do that. I got clearance from Father Davis and my board at the Jesuit headquarters. So I went with them, and we ended up getting them to put back the rest of the money. And so I got contacted by Marcia Smith, and she said, oh, the people at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, the SETI program, are so grateful. They'd like to have you come out and give them a closed door seminar on the theological implications of contact with an extraterrestrial civilization. So I said, well, if I'm going to do that, I'd like to be able to get access to some of the documents that you're getting during your investigation. And she said, well, what ones would you like to have access to? And I said, I want to see the classified portions of Project Blue Book, because I happen to know what that is. So, and she said, oh, they're never going to give those things to you. They won't do that. I said, well, look, use your leverage as the Congressional Research Service to ask them for that. Tell them who I am, and tell them I'm the legal counsel of the Jesuit headquarters, and maybe they'll do it. And it turns out they did. And so you've probably heard this story before, because I've told it like 100 times, or whenever I get any opportunity to tell it. So they ended up bringing the classified portions of the Project Blue Book to the new wing of the Congressional Library. It's called the Madison wing. There wasn't even anybody in there yet. It was all brand new. They just gotten through building it. No one was occupying it at all. And on a Saturday morning, I was invited to come over there and see these classified portions of the Blue Book. So I went over, and long story short, I ended up finding photographs rather of actual a UFO. There wasn't any doubt about what it was. It was crashed. It was on the ground. It had plowed through this field. It was all covered with snow, and it had stuck at this big 45-degree angle, into the side of the hill. There were all kinds of Air Force personnel around it, videoing or actually filming it. They had this camera with these two great big round, canisters on the top of it. So it had to be something like in the 50s. Anyway, and I realized that I could see in the photograph that there were these symbols around the bottom of the dome of this UFO. And so I got the little film canister thing and focused it on the inside of a back inside of my yellow pad, because they told me I couldn't take any notes on anything. And so I traced all the exact symbols that were all along the base of the dome, and took that back home. And I showed it to Father Davis, when I got back on Monday, and I showed him what I'd found, and he reached into his drawer and opened up and handed me this little manila envelope. And I opened it up, and it was a 8.5 by 11 black and white glossy photograph of a UFO in flight. And I asked him where he got this thing, and he said his sister Dodie had sent it to him. His sister Dodie's husband, Michael, was the air traffic controller in Seattle, Washington. And his best friend was a commercial airline pilot who had taken this photograph through the window of his plane of this UFO that was tracking them, right? And he took a photograph of it, and he was afraid. He didn't want to get in any trouble you know, how weird that is, but he didn't want to get in any trouble. And so he said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take the photograph and I'm going to give it to my best friend, Michael, who is the air traffic controller at the Seattle airport. So he came and gave it to him. That Michael didn't want to get in any trouble by reporting it. So he took it and brought it to his wife, Dodie. And he said, here, give this to your brother. He's a priest. Whatever that meant, right? so that's how I became. And then of course later I got contacted by Dr. John Mack, and Dr. John Mack was the chairman of the Department of Clinical Psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, and he had been challenged for writing this book about alien abductions by the faculty committee. So I represented him in front of the faculty committee, and in that context, I got to meet everybody. Everybody was anybody in the UFO world, you know, Bud Hopkins and everybody who was alive at that time, as the lawyer for Dr. John Mack. And so I got to meet everybody on a first name basis, got to be personal friends with all of them, and in preparing to do a grand rounds for the Harvard University about the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence in the UFO phenomenon. And because of that, I was later recruited to be legal counsel for the Disclosure Project by Dr. Stephen Greer. I was legal counsel for the citizens hearings on UFOs with Stephen Bassett. And so, of course, I get to know everybody and meet everybody. And it was partly my job to help vet witnesses to determine who were the really credible witnesses to present to the world, both to Congress in the Disclosure Project in 2001 and to the other members of Congress in 2013. And that's how I got to be involved in this. And so I've gotten to meet hundreds of people, actually, you know, who have had these kind of direct encounters. And that's how I ended up getting to meet Mark. That Mark has had one of the archetypal experiences directly with this phenomenon. And so therefore he's available to talk with you, because I have to leave and go do this. Go do Tatanka's living room to try to talk them into how to take over the United States government here.
Well, let's all give a big thank you so much, Danny, for sharing all this and all the amazing work you've done. Thank you. Thanks for
I'm happy to talk with you guys anytime you want.
Great. Well, we'll have you back for sure. Absolutely.
Okay. Terrific, you guys. I love you all dearly. Okay?
Love you, Danny.
Okay.
Love you, brother.
Okay. I'll see you soon, you guys. Okay.
Danny.
Thank you.
You know, one of the things that I like to think about with the show that I do with Trish, the Straight Talk show that we do every week, is I'm right in the middle of the baby boom generation, and she's a millennial. And Danny is a baby boomer, but we've got another millennial with us, Elizabeth April, who joined us. And Mark, I think you're probably a boomer or pretty close to it.
I'm right on the cusp. I'm at the last year of the boomer generation, so I feel like a crossover.
They're called Xenials. Just saying, if you want to like label it.
What's it called?
A Xenial.
A Xenial.
Gen X. Oh, I guess it's sort of like, I mean, are they, wait, that would be the boomer Gen X sort of transformation, I suppose. So they're not called Xenials.
Well, we're going to kind of shift our attention from Danny over to Elizabeth, but I do want to follow up just a little bit about some of my experience. And I'm just going to talk for 2 minutes about this, because listening to Danny brought up a lot of memories for me. Some of you may know that for many years I made my living producing television. And from 1994 till 2001, I produced over 100 national broadcast segments on UFO stuff. Interviewed 8 former astronauts, 30 former military officials. And a lot of the same people that Danny was talking about were people that I interviewed and worked with. And I do want to say that it's amazing how many people have had experiences. And actually, whereas back in 1947, when Roswell happened, and through the 50s, the government really clamped down. But as best as I can tell, the stance has been not going into full public disclosure, but no longer stopping people from telling their story. And it's kind of like, okay, if you want to believe, you're going to see the TV shows that Scott produced, you're going to listen to Danny Sheehan, you're going to meet Mark Sims, you know, and if you do want to, we're not going to have your throat. I've actually come to respect that perspective because, of course, for a lot of very religious people, the awareness of extraterrestrial intelligence, the awareness that we probably, they are our ancestors, they are who probably populated us. Um, it goes so against what a lot of people have wanted to believe all their life. And my mom was very Christian, and so she helped me to understand that she didn't want to know anything significantly different. And for 30 years, I tried to convince her of whatever it was, and she didn't want to hear it. And I finally came to recognize, you know what? That's her sovereignty. That's her right. It's not my right to, jam my belief down her throat. So I just wanted to kind of mention that. And now, and welcome, Costa. Glad to have you with us. We're going to hear from Costa. So we've got like this embarrassment of riches of people with us. But I'm going to put the spotlight on Elizabeth because a big part of our theme is how consciousness is rising. And Elizabeth, I was very impressed with what you shared ever so briefly on our Saturday Night Live show recently. And I'd love to give you a little more time to share about your personal adventures in consciousness and also what you're watching with the people that you're watching, or that you're influencing and that follow you.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you guys so much for having me on. Definitely love this community, and it's so nice to find, a tribe of like-minded individuals. So I'm super grateful, as always, to speak my truth. And like you mentioned, it's so beautiful how we're no longer getting suppressed in saying the truth, and tuning into those experiences and those stories. So I'm feeling safer and safer to express, what I've experienced. I guess just a little background in me, for those of you who don't know. So I come more so from a psychic, clairvoyant background. That's, I had abilities from a young age. I woke up to my past lifetimes at 16. And ever since then, I'll stub my toe and relive a past life. So I'm very tuned in to other lifetimes, both past and future, and both on and off this planet. And that gives me a lot of experience and knowledge and understanding of human beings and how we got here. Of course, added with remote viewing and astral traveling, I can really kind of deep dive into the whole purpose of humanity. And we're definitely at an unprecedented time right now on planet Earth. And I am of the strong belief that we are all incredibly psychic, incredibly multidimensional beings who have amazing abilities to unlock our DNA. And when we access these aspects of our DNA, and those are becoming more and more expressed, we start to tap into those abilities that we have, going beyond the limitations of just this realm, just this reality. So probably one of my biggest teachings and one of the biggest pieces of information coming through is the understanding that we're powerful, and everything that I can do, I believe everyone can do. And so although we see, the world systems collapsing at this time, we're also seeing the collapse of an old matrix system that has not been aligned to our highest vibration. It's actually been keeping us very stuck in place within the third dimension. And what I understand the third dimension to be, because 3D, 5D is tossed around a lot, especially these days, is the limitations of both space and time. If you kind of scrape away all the kind of verbiage of 3D, it's really just space and time. And when we start to raise our vibration beyond the third dimension, we get into the quantum world, right? Where everything exists simultaneously. And that's what really awakening is stepping into that vibration and waking up to a higher vibration, a higher perspective, and accessing those realms beyond space and time. It's the quantum world where the past, the present, and the future all simultaneously coexist. And that's definitely the world that I exist in. And so we were simultaneously seeing the collapse of the old world and the old world system and order and the matrix. And we're seeing these light workers come online, you know, with their abilities and their vibration. And at the same time, we're seeing unprecedented spikes in the Schumann resonance, which is a pretty good indication, naturally, scientifically, that the electromagnetic vibrations on the planet are raising. Yeah, so it's just a little bit about like what I believe is going on. I'm not sure if this is open for you guys to ask questions or if it's what the flow is of this, but I'll kind of leave it open to see where you guys want to go or where I can kind of fill in the blanks.
Awesome. I've been reading up on you, and you have a really fascinating story about rising in your consciousness. And I'm curious if you'll share a little bit about what happened when you were 18. I don't want to drop it.
Yeah, for sure.
I also have a couple more questions about what your work in the world is as well. So
cool. Awesome. Yeah. So when I was 18, I went away to university, and the first thing I wanted to do was go off to a 10-day silent meditation retreat, Vipassana. And at this point, I realized that I had done Vipassana many, many lifetimes, and I wanted to re-experience that. So when I went, I mean, I was astral traveling, lucid dreaming. I was bringing my telepathic and telekinetic abilities online. Like, you know, I was kind of full force in the quantum world, which was really exciting, and it felt very home to me. But if you asked me if I believed in aliens, I would say, yeah, I'm sure there's something out there, but I mean, they're not here. Like, why would they bother with little old us? You know what I mean? Like, there's trillions of terrestrial planets out there in the universe. Like, why would we be special, right? And that was my kind of understanding. Of course, deep in the middle of the woods on a silent meditation retreat, 2 days in, the second night, I was abducted very consciously. And when I say consciously, like, that memory is burned into my mind. I was abducted by, it's hard because, I mean, calling a species the tall whites is pretty generalized, but it was pretty much a tall white species. And yeah, so they took me from my bed in the middle of the night. I mean, I was awake and could remember all of it to a T, but I wasn't able to say anything and I wasn't able to move. And it was actually a very scary abduction experience. And I believe that they actually chipped me and they put something into my right ear. And that, you know, two things I really do believe from a higher perspective. One, it introduced me to the fact that, yes, indeed, aliens do exist. And yes, indeed, they're here. And it wasn't until a couple weeks after that experience where I started having very vivid flashback and very vivid recall to myself as an interdimensional being, actually, as a matter of fact, as an 8-foot tall gray ambassador living on board a ship. Just like I would have a flashback to a past lifetime if I stubbed my toe or I met a certain person on this planet, I started having flashbacks so vividly that I would be walking down the hall going to university class, and all of a sudden I would flash back to being this 8-foot tall gray being on a very dimly lit ship, walking around the control room, you know? So yeah, so that really opened up a world, a huge can of worms for me at that time. And that's when I started to dive into other dimensions and meet other beings and get introduced to the Galactic Federation. Like, I mean, it really opened up a whole world for me. So that's, I mean, in short. And then I just want to say, so one, it really opened me up to extraterrestrial life, and two, and it also brought back a lot of my memories. But the second thing is, I believe that I needed to have a fear-based alien abduction experience, because I've had a lot of alien experiences now, 8 years later or 10 years later, I guess. And they're all positive. Like, some people just say that I'm an over-optimistic person when it comes to alien life. And I know that I needed to have that fear-based abduction experience to have more compassion over human beings who do have fear-based experiences, and kind of navigate them from the fear into the love and the understanding and the awareness that we actually wrote all of those contracts, even if it wasn't necessarily positive in the moment.
Absolutely. I do believe that we can show up and share in a way when we understand someone's language and understand their feelings. Like, absolutely. I'm curious, what did that experience give you? Did it give you something to, because you're teaching a lot in the world right now. You have many programs. You have some webinars coming up, I saw, which I'm like very interested in. Curious, were you channeling before?
Yeah.
What shifted for you after the abduction, and how did that transform your experience and your teachings?
Absolutely. So, like I said, kind of, I was born with a lot of gifts and abilities. I shut them down at 16. I opened them back up with my first ever past life regression. And that's when I really started to dive into past lifetimes and regression and reincarnation and simultaneous time. And I started getting, downloads and information, and like I said, a lot of astral traveling. But it wasn't until the alien experience where I woke up to, oh my goodness, there is life on other planets. And before, from 16 to 18, I was obsessed with what's the meaning of life? What's the purpose? I went to psychologists, to doctors, to a priest to say, all right, you know something, right? You're an authority figure in this reality, right? Okay, so tell me, what are we doing here? And no one had the answers for me. So I sought it, put it up to myself to really figure out what's the whole meaning of life? What's the purpose? And once again, when I had that interdimensional experience, it actually brought this level of confusion to me, because once again, it's like, why are they interested in us? And then in 2011, so that was about a year later, so 19 years old, I got introduced to the Galactic Federation. And that also confused me even more. I'm like, so you're this incredible federation that's here to uplift and help and awaken and guide humanity. But why? Why us? Why here? Why now? Why are tens of thousands of interdimensional species all interested in little old, third dimensional planet Earth? And, some of the most shocking information that I've received in the past couple of years, specifically from the Palladian Security Council within the Galactic Federation, is that they basically said, we are a peace treaty. We are a living, breathing, walking, talking peace treaty. I mean, this is definitely something I've never expected before. But they basically explained to me back in, 2012, 2013, then again in 2016, they gave me a huge download. They said that we're a giant experiment. And of course, anyone listening to this thinking that, I'm crazy, that's okay. You can take this or leave this. It's totally up to you. But they said that we're basically a giant experiment filled with many, many different interdimensional DNAs. Like I was mentioning, how powerful we are. And this experiment is not just to kind of see how it goes. Essentially, they took the lowest vibrational beings of the universe, and some of the highest vibrational beings of the universe, to create this, what you see here is human beings. And if we can get along, if we can love each other, then we have won the peace treaty. And it doesn't mean that the light rules over the dark, or the high vibrational beings rule over the low vibrational beings in the universe. It just means that the light and the dark can coexist simultaneously, without any issues, right? And so I've been within the Galactic Federation in many, many lifetimes, many interdimensional lifetimes before coming to planet Earth. And I have been relentlessly a part of all of these peace treaties all over the universe, just trying to create harmony here, between light and dark. And finally, this species, us human beings, are supposed to be the species, the peace treaty to end the war of all wars. So, that was a prophecy that was spoken about within the GFL. I mean, millions, if not billions of years ago, long before planet Earth was ever planet Earth. And it's so exciting to be here. And that's why we need to realize that we are all powerful ambassadors. We are cosmic beings who have known about this planet and this body and this DNA and this species for a very long time. And we've been trained to be here before you came here, and you volunteered to be here. And this is by far one of the most exciting times to be alive, not just right now, you know, not just on this planet, but in the universe. Like, this is the place to be. We are on the front lines and it's happening. And honestly, we've already won the war, right? Which is incredible. So yeah, so that's, I mean, that's a lot, in a nutshell, but that's what I believe. And that's what that experience opened me up to, is channeling interdimensionals, understanding cosmic past lifetimes, and really getting to the nitty gritty of the whole purpose of why are humans so special? You know, why us?
Last
You
question.
know, it's amazing timing. Trish and I did a show yesterday, and in that show we talked about the meaning of life. And I firmly believe the meaning of life is we're here to learn to love, starting with ourselves. And we talked about that, and it's kind of based on my experience working with near-death experiences and experts in that field. And so kind of weaving my perception of the meaning of life being we're here to learn to love, starting with ourselves, with this grand experiment you're describing. And then there's one other piece that's very interesting. 2 weeks ago we had, or 3 weeks ago now, we had Deepak Chopra on our show. And Deepak said something I had never heard before. He said that his scientist friends say that if all the species that are endangered right now die, life on this planet will pretty much cease to exist in 5 years. If the human species disappeared, within 5 years, life would absolutely flourish.
Yeah.
So it's this fascinating human experiment that we're in of, are we going to choose to learn to love ourselves individually, which then leads to loving ourselves collectively, which leads to then wanting to become gardeners of the earth and to or are we going to go down the path of the old paradigm of eating ourselves and gluttonizing and burning down the Amazon rainforest to make more burgers, right? And so anyway, I just wanted to kind of bring those two pieces in, Elizabeth, and see how you relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're 100% correct, which is it really starts from within. And I think that a big struggle that a lot of human beings have, let's call it human beings, but really like a big struggle that a lot of cosmic beings have in human bodies is that they don't feel like they belong. So it's very difficult, not only with the persecution and the sacrifice and the, you know, the oppression of society coming down on us, convincing us that we're not good enough, disempowering us every single step of the way. But even within ourselves, we're like, oh, of course we're not good enough. I've never felt like I belong here. I never felt like I fit in. And we're not supposed to, right? So the key part is loving yourself. If you can accept you for this interdimensional hybrid being that you are, this quantum consciousness that simultaneously exists in all and every parallel reality, if you can understand that and accept that and love that in all of your infiniteness, then and only then can we progress to heal the collective, you know. And then, like you said, once we're healing and aligning and harmonizing the collective, then we can finally heal planet Earth and Mother Gaia. And I just know so many light workers who are working so hard at the environmental factors. And one of the biggest things in my mind is we have all of the technology to heal the earth and to reverse the damage that we've done. And we are just waiting for those patents to come out. We are just waiting for those intellectual property rights to be released. We are waiting for the calm after the storm in order to really just start. And when we start, I mean, we're going to heal rapidly. So I have a lot of hope in humanity. We just need to kind of take down the players that are suppressing us at the time.
I just want to read a couple of comments that are coming in. You have fans. Intergalactic families are starting to come together! Exclamation point! And how empowering. The earth wouldn't be the same without you. What a passion.
Oh.
I have one last question, and it's kind of my usual. And it's, you know, again, I grew up in Montana. I speak a very different language than a lot of people that I know. And I think that you might understand that. It's like I have a very spiritual conversation, which a lot of other people don't. I'm curious what one thing that people can do to really connect with them, with this new movement in the world and in our galactic space. Like, what can we do, and what can, like, just like a, yeah, just like one
Yeah.
thing.
For sure. I mean, do you have 5 hours? No. No.
Can we have coffee? Yes.
So the biggest thing, honestly, the kicker, the key, the everything, it's so simple, but it's so difficult for us, is to raise our vibrational frequency. I mean, that's it, mic drop, walk away. Like, that's all we need to do. But the key in raising your vibration is actually distinguishing, determining, understanding the difference between your consciousness and your human. Your conscious mind, your soul, and your ego, your human mind. And if we can do that, and of course, you know, one of the easiest ways to separate those two is through meditation. And really the emphasis on meditation is just being able to quiet the active mind, quiet the fight and flight mechanisms, quiet that prefrontal cortex, to just be in the moment, to allow information to be received by you, you know, the receptacle. And so, yeah, so raising your vibration, and I can talk about raising your vibration all day, but one of the biggest things about raising your vibration is always being in a harmonic alignment with every choice that you make in your reality. So in order to be in harmonic alignment with every choice that you're making, first of all, you need to be aware of the choices that you're making. If you're not aware that you have the ability, and the highest power given to any being in the universe is free will, and we can utilize and access that free will to wear a shirt that makes us happy, or eat a food that nourishes our body. If you're not aware that you have the ability, the capacity to make those choices, then that's going to really take away from your current state of being. So yeah, so be aware of the choices that you're making, and anything that you feel resistance within, maybe it's a family member, maybe it's a food, maybe it's an activity that you're doing. If you have resistance, then you're not in harmonic alignment. So be aware of the choices that you're making. Stop making choices through obligation, judgment, reaction, fear, and start making choices through love and excitement and joy and your inner child, and be in the present moment with the power that you have. And the greatest power is that free will. So be aware of your ability to choose.
Wow. I got to come in for a second.
Wow.
Thank you so much. Trish and I are both very active with Love Coach Academy. That's our company. And in Love Coach Academy, one of our greatest teachings is whenever you're making a choice, may it be a forward movement toward the longing of your wise heart versus a reaction away from fear. So we're coming from our frontal lobe instead of from the back, from the reptile brain. And so that's kind of my, like, yes, big riff with what you just said, kind of what you said going along with something that Trish and I teach. And then I also want to ask you a question about imagination, because clearly you've been blessed to have these amazing experiences. Where does somebody allowing themselves to open up their imagination come into play with having more experiences?
Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting because in a lot of ways, especially in childhood, we're told and taught that our imagination is a bunch of lies. So I don't know if any of you were told that your imaginary friends were imaginary, but all my friends in childhood were interdimensionals. So yeah, so imagination is a huge key, and it's kind of like a connector into other astral realms. So a lot of people, especially after a past life regression, because that's what I started doing to get my career started, is putting people through past life regression. They're like, well, how do I know it's not my imagination? And I'm like, do you really think that you could make that up? Like, where do you think that that came from? Right? And they're like, oh yeah, I guess so. So it's really important, like, you kind of open up the space for your imagination to kind of guide you, and then your intuition and your soul just kind of take hold in that space and take you to where you need to go. You know, so maybe you're imagining or visualizing white light, and then all of a sudden you end up on a spaceship. You know, that wasn't your ego mind, that wasn't your human mind, that was your soul taking you there. So really trusting that space.
Would you say that it's also true that from one perspective, this is a dream world? It's a dream within a dream within a dream. And so therefore, it's all happening in our imagination anyway, right? I've worked with a lot of people who've died, including my mother, my father, and my wife. They all three died in my presence. And in my connection with them after they've left, that's what they report back, is that it's a dream world. And when we die, it's like when you're having a really intense dream and you wake up and go, oh, wow, it's just a dream.
Yeah.
But here when people die, it's like, oh my God, I had this amazing earth life. I was Elizabeth April and I was helping thousands of people to wake up or whatever it was.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, I love quantum physics, and the Greys have downloaded quantum physics and Tesla technology since I was 18. So like I'm all about, you know, simultaneous time and parallel worlds, and I 100% believe this is a simulation, you know, and I don't believe it's an AI simulation or some sort of, you know, man in the sky that's simulating this. I believe that's a collective consciousness that's projecting this to allow us to learn and grow and develop and move forward. And that's the whole point of existing in any body, anywhere in the universe, is to be in the present moment and to experience as much as possible in moment to moment, given the limitations that you have based on your incarnated state. So yeah, 100% all down for dream theory, simulation theory.
I want to give Mark a chance to connect with you a little bit and come into this conversation. Mark, if you're hearing me, he's grabbing his trusty earphones. And Elizabeth, thank you so much.
Yes, I'm listening. Just so you know, I cannot, my computer has a broken microphone, and the only way you can hear me is if I put this. So I've been listening intently to Elizabeth speak, and I could not agree more with everything she says. In fact, I said something in the comment section or the chat section here on Zoom that I totally agree with her analysis. What she's been told is exactly what I've been told. That we are an experiment of peace. And so that's a big deal. And so that's why we matter so much to them. Mm-hmm. And they're very, you know, they love us very much, those that are invested in us in terms of their, the work they've put into this experiment, because they've been involved in what's so confusing that Elizabeth has spoken so eloquently about is the fact that we are dealing with not just physical advanced civilizations and beings that are involved in this orchestration of this experiment, but there are beings at other higher levels of existence, or we say higher realms, higher dimensions, interdimensional, all these words. And it took me a while to wrap my head around the complexity of the cosmology of reality. And that's kind of the way I think about it, that the way Tejbar explained it to me is there are three realms of creation. That's exactly what he calls them, the three realms of creation. And we are the dense realm. From a timeline perspective, we would be the latest of the three realms, and they're kind of nested as dolls. So if I don't want to take up Elizabeth's time, so I could easily go into more detail about this, and I want to be careful not to step on our guest's toes. But it's wonderful to listen to you, Elizabeth, because for me it's confirmation. So I've got my information completely differently than you have, and yet there's so much commonality. And that's one of the reasons I love hearing what you have to say. And I've only recently learned about you. You were a guest on the Harmonic Convergence. I watched that with great interest. And tonight I'm learning even more about you. And I'm just thrilled to have somebody who not only knows so much, but you're young and you're vibrant and you're full of inspirational energy. And it's catchy. And, you know, I'm just so excited that there's a young person who can speak to a very important demographic, which is your generation. You are really something. I'm really, really quite inspired by you.
Oh, thank you so much, Mark. That means so much. That's awesome. And actually, I have a point to make on what you were saying about the 3 different levels. And I completely agree, right? We've got the physical kind of density, right, of the physical material atomic world. Then we have the astral world, right, which is actually, I mean, there's cities that I've seen in the astral world, like cities. I'm like, why do you need a house? You know, you're an astral being. Yeah, it blows my mind, right? An etheric being. And then you have pure source, right, which is that 3rd level.
Right.
And I love dipping into all 3 different perceptions, right, and perspectives of what's happening on this plane. Okay, what are you experiencing as a human? Okay, well, what's your soul experiencing? What's the lesson that you're learning? Okay, great. Now, as a source, you know, why would you put that onto yourself, right, in the bigger, broader perspective? But what is really unprecedented that I want to make a comment about these 3 different levels is we are the lowest level. We are the most dense in the entire universe, yet this is the first time ever we're like a funnel, right? And you could imagine our experience here as a 3rd density being, 3rd dimension being, but we're also funneling in information and vibration and capabilities from these higher planes of existence.
That's right.
And so it's unprecedented. Like typically, if you're a 3rd dimensional being, you're a 3rd dimensional being and you're existing in this density and you're learning the lessons that this density has to give you and offer you. But we're actually, as a matter of fact, you know, interdimensional beings coming from, you know, 8, 9, 10th dimension, incarnating here as a 3rd dimension. And we are bringing forward all of our information from all of those lifetimes and those layers in the universe as well. That's why it's unprecedented, because never before has such a dense species had the capacity, the power, the abilities that we have here today. A lot of us are just asleep, you know, with those abilities. So I think that just kind of speaking generationally, the older generations do have to kind of break through more walls in a sense, right? I find that the millennial generation, there are definitely some light workers out there and some heavy hitters and some hustlers and some incredible 22-year-olds who are doing amazing things. But also there's a huge portion of my generation, including my very own brother, who I call LLS, Lost Soul Syndrome. They're interdimensional beings. They come into this body and they're like, now what? What do? I don't want to do this. I don't want to get a 9-to-5 job, you know? And then that creates the generation expectation, because at the same time, they have this apathy and they're spoon-fed everything, right? So it's kind of this weird generation of like, this world doesn't belong to me. I don't fit in with it. I don't know where to go with it. You know, and then we see these crystalline children coming in, no chakra system whatsoever, who are just mere reflections of us, you know, and this pure crystalline vibration coming through, who don't really, or who are completely removed from this density, and they're anchoring in that new vibration. So we've got a lot going on at this time, but once again, we all need to realize that we have the capacity to tap into those higher realms, and we're not just stuck with space and time here.
Yeah.
Wow.
And if I may, Scott, and let me know if I'm going to screw up the schedule, because there's other people here like Costa and Zinka that we want to hear from. But I just want to share an analogy that was given to me by Tejbar to understand these 3 realms from a scientific perspective. So you had in the beginning the Big Bang. If you believe in such things, and I happen to be a believer, that there was a moment of creation. And at that moment, you can imagine that there were no atoms. There were no stars, of course. It was pure energy, pure. And you could certainly make an argument that there was no light. You need an observer to see light, but you had this rapidly growing universe that seemed to come out of this very infinite, dense point in space, all this energy. And through that rapid expansion, you had a growing universe. And it's really mind-boggling when you do the research to understand how quickly the universe grew in the first few seconds. I mean, much faster than the speed of light that the universe was expanding. And it's at the leading edge of that expansion that you end up having this cooling down effect. This is just a normal case of physics, the second law, or the natural laws of thermodynamics. As space grows, the pressure is reduced, and things cool down. For another way to put it is, if you have a lot of energy in a very tight volume, that energy, when it increases in volume, the temperature will go down. Okay, you got that general idea? And you can think of it as steam. The three states of matter are steam, liquid water, and ice. And he equated these states of matter to the three realms of the universe, or of reality, the realms of creation. So in the early Big Bang of the universe, you have nothing but this pure energy, plasma energy, and a rapidly growing universe. But at some point we hit a transition point. And just like when steam condenses into liquid water at a certain temperature under very specific conditions, that's what happened to create the next realm, which is the astral realm. And then that continued to expand. And then you have a second transition point, creating a barrier between the astral and the physical realm. And that is likened to, water cooling down into ice, the most dense of the three states of matter. And so that's what in effect you have. But it all originates from this point, this infinitely dense point where all the energy, comes forth. And many of us who study these things, there's the saying that it's all consciousness. Well, in the end of the day, it is. And so we're made up of consciousness, but it's solidified, if you will, into atoms, or the subatomic particles that aggregate into things like protons and neutrons, and those further aggregate to create atoms. And then you get hydrogen. And in the early universe, we know that when the first gas clouds were formed, you had massive clouds of hydrogen, the simplest element in the periodic table. And due to gravity, or I should say, because of the consequence that matter, or hydrogen, all elements have mass, gravity begins to play a role into creating these dense clouds to collapse into large spheres. And they are so large that at the center, you get fusion to begin because of the pressure caused by gravity within the middle of these gas clouds. And that causes the first stars to light up. So the stars are born. And this is before there are any planets. You don't get planets until you have supernova of a sun, and so forth. So I just want to give people who have a scientific bent some way to wrap their minds around these three realms of creation. So that's one of the things that I want to share.
Big twinkling for that. Thank you. Wow. Wow. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
I want to, every one of you deserves about 3 hours or 5 hours. I do want to turn the attention to Costa, who actually earlier today, Costa, Mark was telling the story of how you introduced him to Danny Sheehan. Danny was our guest for an hour. Elizabeth, if you can stick around, we would love that. And you certainly don't need to, but if you can, you might enjoy what Costa is going to be sharing. He's going to be sharing some amazing UFO footage. So
awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me on.
It's great to have you here. And we want you to come back for sure. And stick around if you can, okay? Because we'll go into a little bit more of a panel discussion. But Costa, I want to thank you for coming back on our show. Of course, you've been on a couple of briefly, but this is where you get more time. This is where we can drop in a little bit more deeply with you. So,
yeah.
Well, please tell us about the People's Disclosure Project and then introduce your videos.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to thank you, all of you, for having me on again. This has been a fascinating discussion, and I hope that what I have to offer fits in seamlessly with the theme. I think it does, because I'm all about contact with star people and with interdimensionals and such. First of all, for people who may not be familiar with me and what I do, I'm the facilitator and founder of etletstalk.com. We're a community of 50,000 people in more than 100 countries. And since 2012, actually before that, but more formally since 2012, we have been making daily, weekly, and monthly contact with our friends, the star people. And they told me early on they prefer being called star people instead of, although I still use the term ET, but instead of aliens and all that. So I always want to put that out there to the community, that if we could all change our nomenclature there and use star people or star families, cosmic friends, star friends, etc. That makes them very happy. So in our community, we've been doing contact by the thousands all over the globe. Formally, we still do this now. We're in our 10th year of a monthly event, which has been called the Global CE5 Initiative. And that's during a 24-hour period where I ask all of our global contact teams to get together as a group and create a group field of invitation and welcome and love to our star families, our star friends, and ask them to connect with us and get to know them, because they have told us that they're to be thought of not as gods, but as elder brothers, sisters, and cousins, literally family. And so in the same way that we would want to establish, a communication with a relative from afar who is wanting to come and visit, we can think of it that way. Using telepathy and consciousness, they're reaching out to us and inviting relationship, a partnership, a co-creation. So that's what our community really is about, experimenting and making this kind of contact and trying to form relationships one-on-one, one group to another, the entire group with all of the different star civilizations that are here. As many of you have noted here, they're here out of concern and love for us, and want to co-create and make a breakthrough to the golden age of Gaia with us, so that we do our part while they do their part. So that's me kind of setting the larger context of what we do with our contact at etletstalk.com. You mentioned, Scott, the People's Disclosure Project, and briefly, that really folds into the work that I've just been talking about, because my main contention is that disclosure that you hear about a lot in the UFO community is something that's already happened. It's called the People's Disclosure. The tipping point for that, I'm told by our star friends, was reached in 2019. And it was reached because you and I and thousands of us for many years have been getting together and making our own contact and going from being believers into actual knowers, because we know what we saw, and no government or anybody else should be able or allowed to tell us what we didn't see or try to frame it in some other way. And that's what I call the People's Disclosure. It's happened, and it continues to happen every time every one of us makes our own contact. We have disclosed just a little bit more. We tell our story to somebody the way that we're talking all together now. We talk to our colleagues, our friends, and our family. And some of those people, the light goes on and they want to do what we did. So we teach them and invite them in and form a group and make even more contact. So this has been an organic movement that really took off I would say about 10, 15 years ago, and it is just expanding now. As programs like this show us, there is a huge audience, 1.3 billion adults. Research shows that are open, who believe in star civilizations and are open to contact with them. So all of us here, and I'm happy to say this, are leading the way in a joyful way, teaching so many that behind us that will come, the waves that will come behind us, who are already open to this. But it's for us to kind of be breaking the ground, and we've been doing that for a number of years. Not only people in my network, but many other networks who have been making ET contact. So that's what's exciting. That's the biggest picture of all. That is what brings me here, as just, you know, one person who's got a community and is trying to mobilize it and grow it and lead it to do its part so that we all become cosmic humanity and take our place with our star families in the larger cosmic universe. Once we get it right here on Earth, and I'm a cautious optimist that we're getting it right, and love is what will prevail and will get us through. And we have a lot of cosmic help in order to do that. Now, to that end, I get asked a lot, how did I get involved with this? And without telling you my whole life story, like many of you, I had interest when I was younger and in UFOs and ETs and all that. So that kind of primed the pump. But later on in my life, I had dramatic experiences that really changed the course of my life, and which have led to me doing ETLetsTalk.com and the People's Disclosure Movement. So what I've brought with me are not your standard UFO footage. There's plenty of that in my community, and maybe in future shows like this, I can share some of the best of what people have photographed, have videoed in my community that we believe is genuine and wonderful. But for tonight, what I'd like to do is prepare, or actually present, three of the stories that got me more deeply involved, to take the deeper dive in this, so that I'm doing this work full time now. And what I'd like to do is I will tell you the background story for each of the visuals that I'm about to present, and then I'll show you the visual that's the result of that story. And you know, I don't know if you'll believe me or not, but these are my experiences, and as many of us know, what we've experienced, what we know, is what we stick with. We don't allow doubters or haters or skeptics in this world to take away what we know, to take away our power of what we've experienced. And that's the spirit in which I'm presenting these to you. These are my experiences that altered my life. So if I could be allowed to share the screen here, I'll start with my first story and visual to present. I'm not sure how I know when that's being done, but I'm going to give it a try here.
There we go.
Does that work?
Yep, it does. It does.
Okay. Let me.
And one thing, just want to make sure, Costa, that you clicked the two little buttons to allow computer sound and the computer enhancement. When you went to share screen, there's two little buttons you got to click to make sure that whatever the sound is, if you want us to hear the sound, then those buttons need to be clicked.
Where are those two buttons? Since
Go ahead and stop your screen share for a moment.
Stop share. Okay.
Yep. Okay. So go right back to your share screen and click on it. But before you choose your desktop, do you see where it says, when you open up share screen at the bottom, two little buttons, share computer sound and optimize screen share for video clip?
Thank you so much, Scott. That is brilliant. You've done this once or twice, I can tell. And I haven't, but I'm willing to learn from the master here. Well, Zoom wants me to install an audio device. Yeah. Does that mean that, I mean, people can hear me, but will If there's one video, and if there's sound on the video, they may not hear is that what would not be heard since I don't know how to install this device right now?
That's probably true.
Okay, well, we'll have to go with that. Okay, let me start with the first, I'll just put up a background here as I tell my first story. There we go. This is not the visual, but it's just a background. The first thing I want to share with you is at etletstalk.com, we do retreats every year where we physically gather with people, and we, over the course of 6 days and nights, do a lot of group contact, a lot of learning, and we make amazing contact in different locations. The video clip I'm going to show you is very short. It comes from a Joshua Tree retreat in the Southern California in 2017, when I had one of my retreat groups together. And along about, I think, the third or fourth night, we had a really active night in the sky and some on the ground too. But we were seeing zigzagging objects and this and that. And sometimes we're lucky enough to capture some decent video. Now, what you're going to see was captured by an iPhone, because we were not ready for this. And so we were just lucky someone put their iPhone in. You would not have expected that it could yield anything, because it's not built for shooting sky objects at a distance. But I have some friends who are good with reliably enhancing images, and that's what you're about to see. The backstory is that we were seeing a lot of zigzagging objects in the sky, and we've learned over the years how to identify what we believe is natural and explainable versus what is not. These two particular objects, I literally watched them in the lower western part of the sky with my naked eye. They approached from opposite sides of this point in the western sky, relatively low to the horizon, but very discernible. They were definitely there, and they circled each other. Satellites don't do that. Planes don't do that. They approach from different sides at each other and then circled each other, kind of like they were doing a square dance, you know, a do-si-do or something. And then they separated. And at the point they separated is when this particular video starts. And let's hope I can bring it up. You won't be able to hear the audio, but what people are saying, did you see that? Look at that. And here we go.
It should be a little bit below.
These are the two ships, and what you're seeing there is a row of lights that are blinking off and on. The ships have just approached each other. Like I said, they did a circle, that they separated, and I'm freezing the frame here because we put in the captions here so you can see that they were present there, and they were hovering for quite a few minutes.
There you go. Right now. So to the right. Yeah, it should be right about there.
So you're watching ship number 1 here that our photographer focused on with his iPhone.
I'm trying to fumble out my binocs now.
And this is what we watched, hovering there in the lower western horizon. Another 15 seconds. It was hard to estimate the distance, being that it's night. Sometimes you can do that, and I have done that with other objects. I've been able to estimate the distance of one as well as the size of the object by using some geometry. At night, this was not really possible, but that ends that particular clip. That's just one example there of something I consider significant, because you know what, I was there with a group of people, and we were very cognizant of what was going on. We saw all this anomalous behavior, and we were lucky to capture it on an iPhone of all things, and record this image. So it's the kind of thing I like to play for people that are new to this, because it lets them know that anybody who makes this kind of contact can have this kind of experience. Not just us. We're not special. And if you happen to have really good photographic equipment like night vision or other gear, you can capture video and pictures like this one. Now, the next thing I want to show you is the one of the two incidents that really caused a fork in the road in my life and got me into this. I had just discovered in 2006 that it was possible to use human consciousness and meditation to make this interactive, what we call CE5, the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, human initiated interactive connection and communication with star people. So I had spent a few days with a group of 40, 50 people learning the techniques and then having a lot of contact at night. And it was just wonderful. My very first experience, it was exciting. We were having results on the ground, in the sky, learning a lot. During an afternoon break of the group, after we'd meditated, someone came over to me with a picture. And in this picture, they said, look at this. Have you ever seen this before? And it was the first time I'd ever seen one or two orbs that were sharing the picture with the person. And I go, boy, I'd like to get one of those. Can you try taking a picture of me? That's kind of cool. A couple of orbs. What are they? So for the next half hour, half a dozen of us, some of us who were scientists, used a number of different cameras and different backgrounds in the clearing there where we were making our contact. We were at the foot of Mount Shasta in a forest clearing. And we were experimenting with different cameras, always trying to eliminate what might be a natural cause for these couple of these little orbs. So someone took a picture of me as I was standing still and grinning, and I looked at it and there was nothing there. And I was kind of disappointed. And I said, well, let me try a second time. I just don't want to give up. So the second time I stood there, and just before my friend snapped the shutter, clicked the shutter of the camera, I had this quick, sudden inspiration, and I took my right hand and put it over my heart, and silently in my mind and projecting love from my heart, I silently invited any on-planet or off-planet beings to join me in the picture. And then my friend clicked the shutter, and as he clicked the shutter, I kind of thrust out my right arm like in a ta-da gesture, ta-da, just trying to be a little dramatic and enjoying the moment, and having no idea if what I had just done by issuing this silent invitation, what it would do. So here's the result from that picture, from that. And this is me in the middle, as opposed to probably hundreds or maybe 1,000 what I believe to be star beings or even earth beings, interdimensional beings that showed up in response to my invitation. And the way you see me gesturing there is me having just gone, ta-da. I had no idea what had happened. And my friend who clicked the shutter, took the picture, said, you've got to see this. And I go, did I get a couple? Did I get a couple? And he says, you got a couple thousand, and showed me this. And later on, I took this picture and I talked to my spirit guides. And they said, yes, in fact, that was we and your star friends who all showed up. We want you to keep a copy of this picture with you at all times, a hard copy. Keep it in your pocket. And whenever you feel lonely, down, depressed, pull it out and look at it. And remember, you're never alone. So in that spirit,
that's a beautiful story, Costa.
In that spirit, I offer this picture to everybody new who signs up on etletstalk.com, and I tell them the story, and I remind everybody, none of us is ever alone. This is the company that we keep, and I'm not more special than anybody. We've all got this kind of help here. And finally, my final story is. I forget the year. It might have been 2009, 2010. Again, was in Mount Shasta with a group of 40 to 50 people. Night after night, we were making contact and having a lot of results. We were in this, in this location that was very, very dark. We were actually in the backyard of a house that was rented that we were using as our site, but all the lights were off. And this is important because I want everyone to understand we were literally in pitch dark. And if you've ever been in pitch dark, you can't see your hand an inch in front of your face. And sometimes that's exactly what you want. So we were in that pitch dark, making our contact. I should say that we had a friend of ours who's no longer in the body, but she was very openly always talking about being Pleiadian and being on Earth in an Earth body, and also being in constant contact with her relatives, with her father, actually, who was a commander of a starship. And she would go astrally at night up to the starship and visit, and then come back down and live her earthly life. So she had asked her father, commander of one of these ships, on different occasions to come visit us in the sky. And she would tell us which night that would happen. And lo and behold, even here in our location where I live in my home, at my home in the San Francisco Bay Area, we would see his zigzagging pattern, pulsing lights, different luminosities, clearly showing us over a quarter of the sky that he was there, demonstrating to us his presence. And so this made us really happy. Well, this particular night that I'm talking about, where we were in this very dark location, our friend had told us that her father would again show up. Well, all during the night, as we saw other phenomenon in the sky, we didn't see this signature display that we would know would be this particular starship. Didn't see it. So long about midnight, I was kind of disappointed, like, okay, something happened. It was a clear night all night. We had other activity. This particular ship didn't show up. Well, we were in a circle as the meditation ended, and then suddenly I heard a voice from the center of the circle where the photographer, who was always at the ready with some really expensive equipment to take pictures of ground phenomenon and sky phenomena. The photographer yelled in my direction with my wife, Hollis, who many of you know, sitting next to me. He said, "Oh my God, look there, between Costa and Hollis, behind them." And I was startled there in the dark, and I turned my head and looked out into the dark behind me. There was nothing. But our friend and the photographer there was very excited. And someone shone a light so that we could walk to the center of the circle. And in this group of 40 people, every one of us in turn walked to the center of the circle so that we could look through the viewfinder of the camera that our friend had been looking through. The camera had been pointed right at myself and Hollis when this person saw something, which I didn't see with my naked eyes, not a thing. But he said, "Come over here." So like I said, all of us trooped up, formed a line, and looked at his viewfinder, through the viewfinder, because the camera was on a tripod, still pointed at where Hollis and I had been sitting. Our chairs were now empty, and we're in line there. We go up to the viewfinder, and as I'm looking where it's pointing at our seats, there's nothing there in our seats. It's still dark. But when I look in the viewfinder that's pointing in the same area, this is what I saw.
Wow.
This is
Wow.
not a lens flare, folks. This is not a lens flare or a sun flare or whatever. His name is Hirate. He's a Pleiadian. He commands a starship. And depending on who you are, you will see different things in this. I don't like to prejudice people and point to like, oh, here's this and here's that. I kind of leave it to other people. There is definitely form to this. And some people will see more than others. So I will leave it at that. But I do want to say that every single person that walked up to that camera had the same experience as I did. In the area where the camera was pointing with the naked eye, there was nothing. When you looked in the viewfinder, this is what you saw right here. And my friend sent me this snapshot, which is actually low resolution. He's got a way better one. But I think this is still as dramatic as any that I've ever seen. And I realized then, oh my God, Hirate, he didn't appear in the sky. He pulled a fast one on us. He showed up next to us, next to Costa and Hollis. This was meant for us and for the whole group, obviously, but we were kind of the reference point. When I checked with my friend later, I said, "Was that your father, Hirate? Is that him showing up?" She goes, "Oh yeah," and she laughed. Yeah, nice surprise, wasn't it? So,
You know, I see that Mark has his hand up, and it's an amazing story. I just want to give Mark a chance to share as I see him raising his hand.
Oh, I may have accidentally hit a button. No, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Costa. Sorry,
that's okay.
I don't know if you saw, but I just switched from my old computer to my new computer. I haven't even had time. I've had this new computer for like a week, and I haven't had time to set it up. So I've been multitasking here, and I just got my new computer configured. So if I look better, it's only because I have a better camera in my brand new MacBook Pro.
You look fabulous, Mark.
I
And
saw you
especially-
raising your hand. Your hand was like this for a while, and I thought you were raising your hand.
You know, I do all sorts of
He
gesturing.
was sending me a blessing, I think,
Off
you
the
know.
camera.
Anyway, pardon me for 1 second. I want to turn an overhead light on. That's going to make me look yellow, but it's the best I could do because I see I'm losing the natural sunlight that has been coming in the window. 1 second.
You know, while he's doing that, I'll cover for a second. And Mark, we're going to turn it over to you and Zenka in a moment. But
Great.
having documented a lot of different UFO experiences and having my own, it is true that as time goes by, people tend to have different memories or perceptions of what it meant. One of the most interesting stories that I did was about these 5 guys that were hiking, and a very visual ship appeared. 3 of them saw it clearly. One kind of thinks he saw it, and one didn't see anything at all. The one who didn't see anything at all doesn't believe in UFOs. The one who kind of did was like open, and the other 3 were people that had a predisposition to believing. So I had a big UFO personal experience about 20 years ago in Maui. And a lot of those people that I saw it with, there were several of us, we're all still friends. And as the years have gone by, it's been interesting to notice how each of our memories has changed and evolved. And each of our belief systems about what it meant and who it was has evolved. So I just wanted to toss that in while you were tuning your light on, Costa.
No, you know, I appreciate that because I too have experienced that, Scott. And I've heard that from people in my community. Like I was out with my family, same like what you just said. A few people who were believers saw something and the others walked away with nothing. I've been on a beach here in the San Francisco Bay Area with my wife in the broad daylight, full of people. This was many years ago, full of people, blue sky, and literally we saw a cigar-shaped craft in the sky floating along and coming closer when we asked it. We were standing there like looking up, you know, normally that would draw a crowd. Everyone around us was kind of just ignoring us. They were not looking in the direction, and we know what we saw. Everyone else was going on about their lives. Talk about consciousness and where your focus is and what you're going to see and not see. We might as well have been in parallel realities with these people because 5 feet away, they weren't seeing anything and we were. So to your point, that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to just chime in for a moment. This is actually a topic that Tejbar and I have discussed. He had early, after my communion experience, had encouraged me to study psychology and specifically Sigmund Freud and the psychic apparatus model, which is the model that talks about the 3 aspects of the individual, you know, the ego, the superego, and the id. And one of the things that came out of that learning, and this is something Tejbar literally said to me during the 13 days, that, and I've got it right here on my other computer screen. I'll just show you. It's right here. You can't see it very well. There you can. Well, hold on. I don't know if you can read that. There we go.
There we go. Yeah.
These were 3 things that he said of note to me during the 13 days. This is one of my PowerPoint presentations from my original video back in 2013. But he said this: the ego is strong and self-centered. It wants and fights for control when it is necessary for it to give up established beliefs and authority. And so people with very rigid belief systems, especially those that are associated with more fundamentalist or orthodox beliefs in religion are going to have a very difficult time seeing the ships because they literally can see them, but their brain will refuse to process and acknowledge what they're seeing because it threatens the ego so much that, you know, our ego is based on a foundation of beliefs. And if we see something that goes in the face of those beliefs and would require a paradigm shift of understanding to really integrate what we're experiencing, whether it's a sight of a UFO or a ship or something else of that nature, the mind, the ego will actually block it off. And this is one of my favorite quotes of Tejbar. He says, "You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him see it." You can't. Now we know the old adage, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink it. This is, you can't see it. You can't make him see the water. Yeah. And so he was explaining that you have to know your audience. When we are taking such a earth-shattering topic like the fact that we're not alone, and that not only are we not alone in the universe, but the ETs are right here, our star families are right here and always have been. It is really, you really have to know who you're talking to, because you will threaten people's perspectives and their belief systems to a degree that they'll lash out against you.
You know, I want to come in for a second and say that's absolutely accurate. As a coach, I talk about this all the time. When I'm working with a couple and one person will insist that the other person said or did something, and the other person says, "I absolutely never said that, I never did that." And it fits into what you're saying, Mark. We only remember what our ego allows us to remember. And about 2 weeks ago now, I was coaching a couple, and she said something and he got really triggered. And before I could stop him, said some really, really horrible things. I stopped it. And he said, "Why are you stopping me?" And I pointed out what he had just said. He said, "I didn't say that. I didn't say that."
Oh.
And literally his wife and I both heard him say it. And again, it's because it was his reptile brain reacting, and it wasn't within his egoic construct that he could say something that offensive, especially with the coach watching. And on a bigger level, a friend of mine, Richard Green, was very involved in the O.J. Simpson trial. And Richard talked about how O.J. literally would come in and out of remembering that he did it. When he was with his prison buddies, he'd brag about it and remember it because it was cool and they thought it was, you know, but when he was in the courtroom where his ass was on the line, he absolutely did not remember that he had done it. He would go in and out based on what his ego needed. So it's a fascinating dynamic for us to be aware of.
I think knowing your audience is especially important because of everything you just said there, really knowing your audience. And I think we have to learn to be neutral. We all want to go out there on rooftops, or many of us do, I know I do, and yell to the world, "They're here, they're clear, get used to it. Let's work with them." And knowing that some people will throw rocks at you, you know, and knock you off your roof up there. We have to be aware at this time of that audience. And in a way, it's hard, but have compassion that they are where they are. And in the time, in their growing time, they will come to a place where maybe they will be open to this. But not everyone is there right now where we are. And that makes quite a dance, doesn't it, for us to have to dance. What it means to me is just find the right partners. You know, you can't turn everyone onto this right now. But like I've been saying for quite a while, there are 1.3 billion adults, 1.3 billion, 1 out of 7 people on Earth, in theory, who supports what we're talking about, supports it, and would at least be open enough to hearing stories like this from us, and to be taught to do it themselves. And I think that's what our opportunity is, to reach some portion of that great large demographic Maybe I should just go for the moon and say, let's find all 1.3 billion. I'm not ready to say that. I don't know if anybody has the resources to do that, but we've got a lot more company within that group of 1.3 billion that we can dance with and teach in the same way that somebody saw the potential we had and taught us how to make our contact and helped us open up. So we're just passing it along. We're paying it forward to someone else. And that's what I consider a real honor to be trusted to carry forward a mission like that of opening other people up.
Well, and you're doing it, Cus. So you and Mark, and actually that's a perfect segue. Alea Rose just wrote, I would love to know more about people's star people experiences. And so, Mark, I'd love for you to introduce Zenka and tell us a little bit about what Zenka is doing. And Zenka, thank you for being with us for 2+ hours.
No problem.
You enjoyed this because we're eager to hear what you've discovered. But Mark, why don't you do the introduction?
Yeah, so Zenka was on the team with Unify to come to put together the Harmonic Convergence 2020 event. And we were so fortunate to have her be on the team. She comes from an organization, and I apologize, Zinka, why don't you tell us about the organization that you're a part of and your business, and because you tell it best. But what was great about having her is this experiment we were doing was the first time anything like this had been tried in the modern age. I mean, I think Jose Arguelles attempted to do the same thing back in 1987, but he did not have the advantage that we have today with social media and the internet. And I'm also aware of at least one other case in which there was an attempt to make global contact in 1952 of all years. And that's a fascinating story that I'll share with you at a later time. But what was so wonderful about having Zenka be a part of this team when we were first putting it together is she was able to bring tools, data collection tools in the form of surveys, both before, during, and after the harmonic convergence to collect data that would have otherwise not been possible without the proaction, the proactivity of her in her organization. So Zenka, take it away.
Yeah, so I started a project called the Galactic Age Global Awakening Tracker, and I felt this need to make visible this movement of consciousness and the leaders that were coming about to lead the charge. I started doing a project called White Mirror because I was so frustrated that the world wasn't coming up with in their imagination of what we actually wanted to happen. And I realized when I would ask people, about the future, their reptilian brain would totally take over, and they would talk about Big Brother and World War III. It was like ingrained in them, and that's because that's the stories that we feed ourselves with. That's the media that we have. So what Mark is doing and what all the stuff that we're doing here is we're generating a totally new story that has not been told publicly before. It's been taboo, like it's this repressed curiosity that we have in us. And I believe that the box is opening right now, and people want to explore and talk about these things more than ever before. And this is where citizen science and a think tank and decentralized research is really at our doorstep, right? So the government may know about the UFOs or this, they're not telling, you know what I mean? They're barely opening things up. Well, they are opening, so that's great. But we also need our own sources. We need our own research and development. We especially right now with Elizabeth talking and Mark talking about our extended, human capabilities, and like, oh, there's other dimensions. How do I see them? How do I quiet my, how do I leave my body? Like, they say that there's new chakras coming in. There's one right here. There's one in the back of our head. So it's like all this stuff is evolving like it's never been before in an exponential change with technology and our understanding of who we are. So we really have all the tools lying at our feet to come together, and like it's almost like we have 12 pieces of the puzzle piece, and we all get everybody together and say, what do you have? What do you have? What do you have? And in there we unlock this golden age that we're talking about, where it's a renaissance, where people are learning and thriving and creating the world we want. And it starts with that vision, and it starts with that choice, like Elizabeth said, and Mark has lived, of saying, okay, I have a choice here. Like every day, every moment, I choose what I do. I choose what I eat. I choose what I think. I choose what, taking control of that. And I'm excited to share with you guys some of the data we got back from the harmonic convergence. And I want to encourage everybody who has seen or had an experience meditating or in a dream or seen light ships in the sky to do it more and do it together, because it's so much more fun when you invite people. It's more relaxing. I had never seen light ships, and we're preparing for the event at Mark's house one night, and we did our meditation, which is so great to spend that 20 minutes to really calm yourself, and then he gives you 6 minutes to just be with yourself, right? And then we're relaxing, we're looking up in the sky, and all of a sudden I see something and the person next to me sees something, but nobody else saw it, and then the next time, okay, we saw something. But on the night of the 13th, 40 people, we all saw the same thing. And we're like, that is crazy, So it's like, it's really fun to have that first time where the Unify and Mark, they had this like phrase that they put on the harmonic convergence, was like, recalibrate your worldview. And it's like, wow, that is an exciting experience. For some people, it's fear-based. And so, like you said, you guys, we have to be open to that, to fear coming in and say, wait a minute, what does this mean if this is true? But I think that's where we get to create this next chapter. We're entering a shift where it's not like top down anymore. We're not going to be listening, we're turning off our radios, we're turning off our TVs, we're turning off that story and creating another story. Maya Monteserios is working on this project to help us spread these viral videos, right? Because if we don't break through, we're going to start believing another reality that's not true for us. You know what I mean? So let me share a little bit. I'll share my screen of some of the things that we learned. And this is so exciting, because you don't always you don't always find the things that you expect. Mark did an incredible job of asking people, like, let's do this. This is the value proposition. We're going to mass meditate. We know it worked with the Maharishi effect. We've done that with 8,000 meditators that took down crime around the country. So we know that there's something about a tipping point that's important. And he amassed all these people, and 90% of the 5,000 people that took our first survey said, yep, we're going to make contact. So that's really half the battle. It's creating the possibility space that's going to happen. And we found that 46% of the people had prior experience, whether it was through dreams or meditation and in the physical. We got overwhelmed. We're still sorting through contact reports that people have sent in. We had 1,700 people from 38 countries that had a life-changing experience of contact. And it's so great to see people sharing their stories and getting enthusiastic about it. We also asked some other questions throughout the week, because remember this conference that Mark put on was also, about ancient wisdom and learning about ourselves. And this is this is really, you know, telling about our world. And this is what we're talking about. The media is telling us all day long about our problems. How are we going to create the world we want if all we're hearing about is our problems all day long, right? And that's why it's important to rise up people like Mark and Scott and Trish and all you guys that you are leaders, when we need to put you out there with the solutions that you're creating, because that's what literally creates them. So we found that people either had a bad relationship with themselves, like they really felt disconnected. This is how would you describe your relationship with yourself, or they had a pretty good one. And we realized that when we're talking about our life force energy, your mindset is the most important part, right? How you perceive your world, the lens that you're looking at it. And what disrupts our energy is politics and toxic relationships. So there you go. Like, yeah, that's important to take a look at those things in your life. So when you mentioned earlier in the broadcast, Scott, that like this was we're living in an experience that's supposed to train us to be in love, and then we have to start with ourselves. Like, that's what I was telling Mark today. The data that we got from these 14,000 surveys was that people were desperate to connect with themselves.
Yes.
And we need to start with ourselves. I need to start with myself. You know, we all need to start with ourselves, right? Because it's so much easier just to focus on everybody else or everything else.
I'm stopping the screen share for a minute, just because I'm putting the spotlight on Trish, because she just got very excited.
Oh, well, I run a show every
show.
Yeah, I run a show every Thursday to teach people how to love themselves more deeply. And my business partner, Dawn Light Amora, she also is a self-love coach. And we have a program where we invite people in and we go into people's stories. We help them separate their story from reality and really teach them how to love themselves as the beings that they are, that they can't even comprehend in the moment. So yeah.
Wow. Wow. So you're hitting all those points. It's like whatever story we tell ourselves is what we're going to live. So we believe we're creating a golden age of peace and a renaissance. That's the first, that's the first step. And I'm so glad that you're giving people tools to do that, because nobody ever taught you how to love yourself. It's not always, easy to know how to do that. So here we are, so if you could forgive someone in your life, who would it be? Myself is like through the roof. So maybe Trish, you can do like an episode on forgiveness. You probably already have, but like, that's the first step, like forgiving the people in your life, forgiving yourself. And which do you wish you could do next to improve your self-respect? Speak my truth. There you go. And it reminds me what Scott said in the beginning of the call. It's like he said, those people that were in the rain protesting the war changed the course of history. So every time you speak your truth, like Mark did, and like Costa did, and each one of us, every time we do that, we are changing the world. Because we're like, this is going to be a floodgate, and we're just chipping away right now, chip, but we're going to cause a floodgate to open up, and people are going to be able to ask these wonderful questions. Like, are we alone? Like, that's a great question to ask. It shouldn't be under the rug, So the best way to face your shadow, again, the top of the charts, love yourself. I mean, it's all right here. In this one, do you feel like you know what your main passions are and your life purposes? We had 66% say they do. I think that's like the first step in creating magic in your life, is really knowing yourself. And there's a lot of great tools out there now. And here again, the obstacle we most want to surmount is connecting with our higher self. Boom. So you Mark and Trish and all you guys are really at the forefront of the teachers that can get to teach us how to do that. And this was something that I kind of took for granted, but this really got Mark excited today, because he said, wow, do you think more of humanity is awakening to positive ideas of what's possible in the future? Yes, so we 98% believe that. We're starting to throw the script away that's saying all is lost, this is messed up. You know what I mean? Like, we can see that something new is emerging, and just like that seed of hope, that's all we need, right? That lifts us up in order to turn into these powerful creators that we are. So that's the great Petri dish is ready for us. So, and here, true or false, we're entering a period of global peace and collaboration. True, 73%.
Only false was 4%.
Yeah, yes.
I mean, I was blown away. I was really blown away because I really thought there would be more of a 50-50 kind of pessimistic versus optimistic feedback from people, given the state of things in the world right now. But in the face of COVID and all that, has been going on in politics and the Trump era, and I am just so inspired by this and hopeful. I'm not worried about anything anyway, because I know it's all perfect, but this really made me realize we are turning a corner very quickly.
Yeah, I saw someone had named their website, I think it said Love Has Won. And I think, like, Elizabeth shared that, like, yeah, 2019, we already crossed the tipping point. Now it's just a matter of like delivering it with even more love, bringing more people with us. Like, this is the time to learn all our lessons, and we're going to do it together because we're all kind of a mess. So it's just like, all right, let's just get messy. Let's learn our lessons and let's have a great time. Let's have a great time building this new thing. So I'll just share the final pieces of the survey here. People most care about raising the consciousness of the planet, what we talked about today. And we had a lot of people that knew about their star family. I highly recommend getting a channel from a healer. That's a good way to know, what your connections are in that way. If you're not meditating that way. And we have Palladians, Arcturians, Syrians, all of them. So we also collected collective resources. And I think that if we're going to build a think tank for humanity, this Library of Alexandria, we're going to want to call out these incredible leaders. Disclosure for us, like there's all these great people. And I'll just close by saying that on the THC website, you're going to be able to read all these incredible stories. I mean, we have dozens and dozens, and we got volunteers sorting through literally hundreds of reports that have come in from around the world. And we're looking forward to sharing that incredible archive of, like, Mark did it, he created space, and now we get to just do it every month and have fun, invite other people into that experience, because doing it in a group definitely helps other people, like, into that experience. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Zinka. That was amazing. I'm still glowing over your report, and I've been sharing it with people this afternoon, calling and talking about it with some of the people on the team. And of all the stuff I get excited about, that report really nails it. It just shows a very bright future for humanity, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I so appreciate that your website is all about new story, right? We need a new story. And like you said, there's all these movies that always show a post-apocalyptic wasteland with Mad Max and cockroaches the size of my dog. And, that's not the story that I think our tribe is signing up for. We've signed up for rainbows and unicorns, right?
Right, and that story, just to be clear, so the Maya Montessorios started this idea of the new story. We ended up throwing all the survey data from Mark's project there because we couldn't be editing also the website of the Harmonic Convergence, but it's all going to find its home back with the Harmonic Convergence site. So it's a wonderful project, and that is the root thing that I think Mark understands with his music and spreading that. Like, that is the only important part, is changing the story, giving our permission to live a different life, each one of us, and this world a different way. And that's the first, that's the locomotion for all of this. We have, like Trish, you said, you know, it's like we get stuck, right? We get totally stuck when we can actually quantum leap to something. We get stuck. And so every day we get stuck in the same old story. And that's where we get to expand right now. We get to join this new parade and create something really fun.
Basically just a chemical reaction in your brain that you've run a zillion times.
Whoa.
So we get to change the chemistry in your brain, your thoughts, and shifting that whole system in your brain. So absolutely, we get stuck because we were taught to get stuck. We were taught not to love without dysfunction. Like, and how do you love anything else or anybody else is that you have to love this first so that you can show up in more compassion, empathy, and just show up. Actually, like presence, like full presence. And that's, I think, the key point that I've taken away from listening to every one of you is that the presence of honoring yourself in the moment and really saying yes to what's coming in. So if you hear or feel something, like right there, that's the truth. If it lights your core on fire, that's your truth. And just really honoring that, whether it's something that someone might be like, oh, that's not, you know, be like, no, that's real. That's real for me. And that's my truth and my heart right there. So yeah, I'm drooling right now. Like, do you have a
You know, Joe Dispenza says you chemically get addicted to feeling bad. So it's like we really are like, we really are having to make that initial change. And I think that, like, they talk about the 4 agreements, like when you speak out into the world, like this is how I'm feeling, or this is how I am in this moment. I'm feeling uncomfortable, or I want to tell you something. This is my truth. I can't help it, you know, then you basically are creating an environment where you're going to be feeling better because it's more like harmonious, like you guys talked about. And that once you start to feel harmonious, there's no stopping you, right? And you show other people how to do that by being that. So every step you make in the right direction, you're going to have good days and bad days. Is you show, you know, it's that contagion of what your energy can be to people. It's really all we need to do. You kept asking people, what can we do? This is a wildfire thing. It's one person to the next person, to the next person, to the next person, to the next person. So just love yourself, I guess,
well, we get addicted to the thoughts that we run. We get addicted to the chemistry that we're running. So whatever you're running, whatever you're putting in your body or whatever you're running in your head, like that's the chemistry, right? Whoa. So you can shift your vibration just by being around people who are higher vibration. Mm-hmm. It draws you up, right? So if you work on yourself, then I can work on myself, and it shifts the whole vibration of the world. I mean, exactly what Elizabeth was saying, like just dropping a very simple point is like shifting the vibration inside of you really shifts everything. And that's, you know, I believe that's why they're coming to us right now and speaking to us, is because we're shifting and we're able to see and communicate in a loving, kind, compassionate way because we're doing it here. Thank you so much.
Coherence. I'll say one last thing is that in physics, coherence, and what we know with Maharishi and the work that Roger Nelson is doing, coherence is stronger than chaos. So you being in that heart, brain, hara, like harmony is actually so much stronger than the person next to you, which is why, if they're in chaos, which is why it doesn't take a lot of us, right? You know, between 8,000 and 8 million, like, let's just do this. Let's just do this. Let's just be this, you know, let's support each other.
Thank you so much for your incredible enthusiasm, Zinka. And I want to acknowledge again your partner, Maya. We had her on last week.
Awesome.
And again, Maya is the co-founder, along with Zinka, of newstory.earth. And they are Global Awakening trackers. What a cool job, right? I don't know, maybe a couple lifetimes ago you were tracking bears. Now you're tracking consciousness, right? So it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I want to let people know about a couple of really important shows that are coming up tomorrow. With the support of Mark Sims, tomorrow is the day out of time. The Mayan calendar, as kind of Jose Arguelles back in the 80s made us aware of. And there was this thing called the day out of time, and tomorrow is the day out of time. And we are going to be doing an all-day event from 9 o'clock in the morning until 4 or 5 in the afternoon. We take a short break, and then we come back with our Saturday Night Live show, which again is going to be all about the day out of time. And we've got a remarkable combination of musicians, creative expressionists, people like Alex and Allison Gray, Gabriel Cousins, Daniel Pinchbeck, Mark Sims. We had to do 4 rows. It's the first time we've had a 4-row poster because we have so many people coming down to the show tomorrow. Again, the daytime show, which is going to be primarily a lot of video footage that was accumulated, including Jose Arguelles leading meditations. And then in the evening, we're going to go to our Saturday Night Alive show. So please join us. Both of these shows are going to be broadcast on Unify, so we're really excited about that. You can also find them on Love Coach Academy, where a lot of you are watching right now, our Love Coach Academy page. So we're excited about that. And Mark, I just want to say thank you, because you're who kind of said, hey, Scott, you guys got to do this day out of time thing. So tell us a little bit about it, like how you found out about it and what it means to you.
Well, you know, we wanted to honor Jose Arguelles. I mean, he did the original harmonic convergence, and for those of you that aren't aware, he organized that event over many years of his life. He had a vision like I did when he was a young man. He was 14 years old. He was at the major pyramid in Mexico City. I can never pronounce the name of that, but it's the major one. He was there with his family, and he had just ascended to the very top of that pyramid, and he suddenly has a vision. And it's the vision of the harmonic convergence, a global meditation for world peace. And this directed him and informed him throughout his life in areas of study. He later became a scientist, a PhD scientist, and studied science along with the ancient culture of the Mayans and their system of time, and came up with the theory, which I believe is more than a theory, that one of the things that has imprisoned us is the way that we use our calendar. The Gregorian calendar really is a type of prison that we need to break out of. And the reason it's a prison is because it's out of sync with the natural harmony of time, based on a 28-day moon month and 13 months out of the year. And tomorrow is what's called the Mayan calendar day out of time. Because when you do the math, 13 months times 28 days, that gives you 364 days. That leaves 1 day to get you to a full solar year. And the Mayans called it the day out of time. So we're celebrating that tomorrow. And it really, when we began doing the research for the harmonic convergence, this was way back in February and March, we discovered that there were already a lot of Facebook groups and people who were championing Jose's work, and they had all likewise been given a vision. Some of the people that support who created the Facebook page Harmonic Convergence 2020, that's not my domain or my my Facebook group. That was started by another person down in South America. And he will be on the show tomorrow, along with other of his colleagues, and Stephanie South, who was Jose Arguelles's protege, who really kind of took over his work. She was trained by him and was somewhat of a colleague of his for many years before he died, and has continued to carry the torch. And so Stephanie will be on the program tomorrow. We'll hear from her. I'm really eager to talk more with her and hear what she has to say tomorrow. So this is so when we reached out to them to see if there wasn't a way we could join forces, what the feedback we got from them is that the vision that they had gotten for the 2020 harmonic convergence was the day out of time, the 25th, where my vision came, and started on July 5th through the 14th. So we decided to collaborate, and this is my attempt to honor Jose and Stephanie South and the others that we'll be seeing tomorrow, to allow them to explain to the world and anybody who's joining us what Jose's key message was and why it's so important for us to transition from a Gregorian calendar that's really screwed us up to a 13-month calendar, which will get us back into the natural harmony of the world, of our Earth and our solar system, frankly. And I believe ultimately it will put us on a cycle of time that will put us in universal harmony. And that was the name of the 10th day of our harmonic convergence on the 14th. So, so there's a lot of important content tomorrow that we didn't really have chance to focus on. And so this will allow us to do that.
Thank you so much, Mark, for all that you do to raise consciousness. And it is really important for us to learn about this. And tomorrow's going to be an amazing day. It's going to be a long day, but we've got so much scheduled for people to see. So please come back and join us from 9 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock, maybe even 5, because there's going to be a question and answer period. Then we'll take a brief break, and then Saturday night alive at 6 p.m. I also want to just acknowledge all the people that have been commenting. We've had between 80 and 90 people in our Zoom room throughout this call, and a lot of people on different watch parties and Facebook. And so thank you, everybody, for your comments. And there were a lot of questions, that kind of came through as we were teaching today and as we were presenting. So I'll go back and I'll try and respond to some of those. Maybe Mark will get a chance to do that. But thank you, everybody. And a reminder that Trish and I are doing Straight Talk every Friday night. It's the third Friday in a row that we've done something with Mark on this topic. And so let us know what other topics you want to see us tackle. We did a wonderful show when Black Lives Matter was really happening in a big way. We've done shows on death and dying. We've done shows on different sexual styles and relationships. It's straight talk, right? So we're here to talk about the stuff that people might be shy to talk about or want to have a forum to talk about. So we certainly want to hear about you. Yes, near-death experiences, absolutely. So I'm going to give everybody a chance to kind of say one last thought. Zenka, any last thoughts you want to share?
No, just thanks to everyone for being here. We'd love to have your voices and your minds and your hearts along with this incredible program to keep getting all this information, this inspiration out. So we're excited to be on the path with everyone with us tonight. And so thanks for doing this, Scott and Trish.
Absolutely. And thank you, Zenka, for the great, great work you're doing. And Mark, any last thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah, I do have something I'm looking up right now. And this is something Tejbar told me back in 2012. It was actually the morning of our communion. And I was walking in the desert with him that morning. And he said something to me that he said was the most important thing he could teach me. And I take that as meaning this is the most important thing I could teach all of you. And it's called the power of thought consciousness. And I've got it here on my computer, so I'm gonna read it. The power of thought consciousness. Your thoughts are very important in that they influence the creation of the now, the only reality. This is why it is so important to think positively in the moment and about the future. This is the key to happiness. Wish for good things for yourself and those that you love, and never let frustration, sadness, anger, or depression stay with you for long. In short, your thoughts create your emotions, your reality, and contribute to the universal reality.
Mm.
So your thoughts are incredibly important. And by collaborating, this Maharishi effect that Zenka referred to is very real. And by joining together in our good thoughts for ourselves and for everyone that we care about, and frankly, I care about every human being on this planet. And we have the power to take our dream, and our dream is for a world that's filled with peace and love. It doesn't mean it's a utopic world or a perfect world in the sense that we're singing Kumbaya every morning together, but it'll be a different world, one that we can live in peace. There won't be this chaos, and it's just going to be amazing. I'm so excited. And so I'm looking forward to collaborating with you through using consciousness. We are an amazing, incredible being with amazing technology at our fingertips or on the top of our head, inside of our head. And all we have to do is learn how to use it.
Ooh,
Powerful.
beautiful. Big twinkling for you, Mark. Julie Parmer in the comments writes it perfectly. She says, Mark, you're a human angel. Thank you for your words of wisdom. And Alea writes, more about Tejbar. Please, please, I want to know about him. It's so lovely to listen about him and from him. So that's just the two most recent comments coming up. So,
well, I'll be publishing the book very soon. I have a book coming out called 13 Days with Tejbar, and I would have had it done months ago if it weren't for the harmonic convergence. So I'm looking forward to wrapping it up, and so that will be happening soon.
great. Well, we definitely will have you on and promote the book, that's for sure.
Thank you.
My partner, Trish, what are your thoughts? What are your takeaways from tonight?
I'd really like to thank each one of our guests, Mark and Zenka, Elizabeth, Costa, and Danny. I'm missing one.
Nope, I think you got everybody.
Oh, well, you. I'd like to thank you for knowing so many amazing people, Scott. Wow. I wanted to just say something, like just put a pin in something that Mark just said. And it's not about being, it's not going to be hunky-dory and all rainbows and butterflies, but it is about learning to love and accept what is now. And it's just, what happens there is that there's going to be a lot more balance, and without so much crunchy and it's going to be like, oh, well, this is what's happening now, and it doesn't have to be the story that I create. It's what's real, and that's what's safe and feels good. Thank you all for showing up so vulnerably, for being so intelligent and really loving yourselves enough to share your truth with the world. Thank you.
Thanks, Trish.
Yeah, thank you, Trish.
I think my closing thought is, let's be conscious of what we're collecting evidence to believe. I spend a lot of time coaching couples and people, and it's really helped me to recognize, and we've kind of alluded to this in different ways, that where we put, where attention goes, energy flows. And so what are you collecting evidence to believe? Are you collecting evidence to believe that we're fucked, that life is gonna, just be terrible? Are you collecting evidence to believe that you're not gonna be fulfilled? Or are you collecting evidence that creates greater faith? Evidence that humankind is indeed like, and I always draw this analogy, we are the butterfly cells. We are the imaginal cells. Yes, we're at a time that the old paradigm had to die. It was not sustainable. It was not sustainable. And so the old paradigm represented by the caterpillar, and by the way, caterpillars have a voracious appetite. They eat way more. They're not environmentally friendly beings. They die, they stuff themselves, they die, and they turn into this kind of primordial soup. And then inside the soup, the little butterfly cells start to find each other. And oh, there's Mark, there's Trish, there's Zenka, there's Danny Sheehan. He's been around for a while. And all the different butterfly cells find each other and they feed off the soup. They inform each other, and this incredible thing happens. And that caterpillar turns into a butterfly. And it's such a perfect analogy for our time. Now, when those butterfly cells are in the middle of that soup, it's probably pretty weird. It's like, where are we? What's going on? It's chaos. It's uncomfortable probably. And I think that's where we are right now. But let's have faith. We are going to lighten up and we're going to all fly together. So that's kind of my closing thought. I hope to see all of you tomorrow for the Day Out of Time, which Mark, by the way, added. It's the Day Out of Time, and time is art. So yes, thank you for that reminder, Mark. I'm looking forward to seeing all of you tomorrow. And good night, everybody. Have a beautiful, beautiful evening and a wonderful weekend. And spend the weekend with us, okay? Take care.